Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was the priest of Kami and Shinigami. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Valnaern and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. The Cultist, Chapter 1. His Dark Beginnings. Leave her alone. A blonde-haired child, no older than 8, shouted as he ran towards the group of bullies that were surrounding a lavender-haired girl. The dark canopy of Konoha's forest was casting perfect shade of the midday as the child tried to run as fast as his little legs could carry him, weaving and jumping over thick roots of the mighty forest, hoping to make it in time to help the girl who was on her knees and crying. The 3 bullies, all of them of nondescript appearance, tensed for a second when they heard someone shout. When they turned around and looked in the direction of the voice, they immediately relaxed. "Boy, it's the demon kid." One of them smirked. Lavender-haired girl's head snapped up upon hearing that and her teary eyes widened when she saw someone actually trying to help her. Please. Don't hurt him." She managed to plead through the sobs. "Don't you worry. Naruto Uzumaki is here to save the day." The blonde shouted as he finally got close. But he was still a developing child who was not quite used to intense physical strain which he was doing for the past few minutes. He was running away from the village's town center, where he was unlucky to come across some civilians who took their hate on another level. It took him a couple of minutes of running until he reached one of the densely forested area near the walls of the village until he heard a girl's cry. And thus he didn't see a particularly sneaky vine which twisted around a smaller root in his way. He tumbled, lost his balance, and fell face first into the ground right in front of the bullies. Almost like being served on a silver platter. "Ha." The bullies laughed. One of them, the one who was on the lanky side, quickly ran and sat on Naruto's back and pinned him down. "My father always said to stay away from you. Always called you a demon." "Why do they call you a demon?" "I don't know." Naruto exclaimed as he struggled to get up. "Let me go." The third kid approached the blonde and looked at him nastily. "My mother always told me if I get the chance, then I should teach you a lesson. Apparently it's because of you that I don't have a sister anymore. You think it's okay?" The first one asked, a bit uncertain. This time it was the second one who answered. "My father has said something like that too. It's not really fun to play with the creepy girl anymore, all she does is cry. Let's teach this demon a lesson like our parents told us to." "Yeah. He will know better next time." And so commenced the beating of one Naruto Uzumaki. A bundle of joy who only wanted to help the poor girl. It was very soon that he passed out from exhaustion and pain, at which point the bullies got bored and left. I am so sorry." The girl cried even more when the bullies left. She felt so guilty and powerless and terrified. It's because of her that the boy, Naruto he said, is now in this state. And she couldn't do anything. A minute or two later she saw some people in animal masks arrive Anbu, together with her father. Hinata. When he opened his eyes all he saw was the white ceiling. Naruto sighed again in the hospital. He didn't particularly hate the hospital because people treated him fairly here. But he didn't like it either. The sterile smell and the white walls were a bit suffocating. Then again, more often than not it was his own fault that he kept ending up here trying to imitate ninja, doing some dangerous pranks, or trying to train not knowing what he was doing. Being an orphan and bored with a limitless amount of energy would do that to you. "Good evening, Naruto-kun," an elderly voice called out from his right side. Naruto immediately felt the voice fill him with that familiar warmth that he'd always craved, and he couldn't help but smile in joy as he sat up and looked at his most precious person Jiji. The voice belonged to one Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha. But to Naruto he was simply Jiji. "I'm glad you're okay, but please take it easy. Someone will come shortly to check up on you." "I'm fine," Naruto pouted. "I'm always fine." Hiruzen couldn't help but chuckle a bit seeing the adorable pout of the child. The child was right too, he did possess remarkable healing capabilities. "I know you are. But rules are rules." The door opened and a plain-looking doctor came in. "Ah, Takashi-san." "Okage-sama." Takashi nodded and then turned to Naruto and gave him a smile as the boy waved to him. "Good evening, Naruto. Before you ask, you've only been here for a couple of hours. I will just quickly check that you're definitely okay and then you can be on your way." Naruto nodded. He was quite familiar with the procedure despite wishing he wouldn't need to do it every time. As the doctor got to work and activated his medical ninjutsu, Hiruzen decided that he might as well ask what happened. Naruto got a bit sad but told the whole tale of what happened anyway. Hiruzen listened without changing his expression, but Naruto knew it was always painful for his Jiji to hear these things. It's the way his eyes changed whenever Naruto spoke of such things. Eyes full of regret and sadness. It was quite sad that Naruto was forced to grow up so quickly and learn the skill of reading people in order to protect himself. A couple of minutes later Takashi left after saying Naruto is healthy and good to go. This is when Naruto decided to ask a question he really wanted to ask but was too shy to do in front of Takashi. "Jiji." "Yes, my boy. Am I truly a demon?" Hiruzen was quite shocked to receive such a question, but in hindsight, he shouldn't be. No, of course not. Oh, how he wished he could tell Naruto the truth. He knew that not knowing why he was treated badly is worse than knowing the truth, but he just wished to protect Naruto a little bit longer. Just if there was a chance for the boy to enjoy his childhood. The pipe dream, but the guilt was not allowing him to just tell the boy. Are my parents demons? Of course not, Naruto. Naruto looked sharply at his Jiji. So you know who my parents are? Hiruzen sighed again. That's a question that comes up quite often, and he knew that, partly, it just comes out automatically from Naruto. Yet he has to tell another lie. No, Naruto-kun, I don't. It's just impossible for you to be a child of a demon, at the very least for a simple fact that demons don't exist. Well, the Biju were not demons, he mused, they are a product of tales, stories, religion, and mythology. Something to scare the naughty children with. Why are you asking? Apart from today, who is calling you that? A couple of people. I don't know. Naruto looked away for a moment before looking back at Hiruzen again. Jiji, you said demons exist in mythology? Mythology, yeah. And religion. Is there any books you could give me I could read about demons? My boy, why would you want to read about something like that? I just want to know the stories. Some people call me a demon. Hiruzen sighed again. His lips twitched in mild amusement when he realized he does that a lot when with Naruto. Naruto-kun, please don't listen to those people. You are a precious bundle of joy and I would like for you to remain that way. You don't need to read all of that grim, scary stuff. Naruto giggled a bit at that comment before calming down and looking at Hiruzen with the most serious face he could pull off. Which looked like an intense pout. Hiruzen had to cover his mouth with a hand as he fake coughed to hide the throaty laugh that threatened to escape. This was serious and it wouldn't do well if he seemed like he was not taking Naruto as seriously as he should be. I know that, Jiji. But it's for me. There are not many people that call me a demon, but those that do are nasty. And village as a whole treats me differently, I don't know. I just want to read a bit more about them to see for myself what they are. I am just Naruto and if they call me a demon then shouldn't they be demons themselves? I just want to see for my own eyes that I am not one of them. That was quite a leap of logic, Hiruzen mused. And then sighed. Again. He really didn't want Naruto to bother with these things, but at the end of the day it was harmless and would hopefully divert some of that endless energy into academics. Not quite what he envisioned for Naruto, but in a roundabout way the child did make a valid point. Maybe if he learned more about the demons of yore and myths he would see for himself that he is not one of them. Despite Naruto saying he was fine, Hiruzen could still sense that it was troubling Naruto greatly. Maybe this would put his mind to rest. Very well. There are a couple of books that I could lend you to read. I will go and fetch them while you wait here. When I return, we can go for a late dinner at Ichiraku's before dropping you off at your apartment. Naruto visible brightened up. Yeah. Thank you Jiji, you're the best. Unknowingly to both of them, or even the Anbu in the shadows, or even the rest of the planet, there was someone, something, listening in. Or more accurately, distant echoes of this conversation, distorted reflections of this blonde child, reached the deepest, hottest, most forgotten and abandoned depths of the netherworld, of hell. A closed eyelid fluttered, an ear twitched. And the tiniest, most atomic movement of chains reverberated the quietest clink that sent unperceivable vibrations across the time and space. Almost unperceivable. 2 months later, as promised, Hiruzen did give Naruto a couple of books on the topic. Religions of the Elemental Nations, Myths and Stories of the Elemental Nations, which was written by the same author. Will of Fire. Religion or Philosophy. Stories of the Night, Kami and the Scrolls, Spirits and Their Nature. At first, it was very hard for Naruto to read any of these books. He was, after all, still an 8-year-old boy and by nature he was too energetic and always thought books were boring. But as he managed to read one sentence one day, 2 sentences the other day, eventually he got engrossed in the books he was reading and he finally managed to read the final book in just a week. It was hard to understand at first, but Naruto was a fast learner, life forced him to be. It was good that Naruto discovered that he actually enjoyed reading. As a result, he was causing less trouble and pranks, and the villagers could release a breath of relief when they didn't have to look over their shoulders and think they will be the next to be pranked. Most villagers didn't hate Naruto, and most of their dislike stemmed from his troublemaking tendencies. While they couldn't ignore the fact that he was the bearer of the Kyuubi that killed hundreds all those years ago, they couldn't just go out and condemn a child for bearing this burden. They hated what he carried, but they knew that it wasn't the child's fault. Nevertheless, they chose to simply ignore Naruto. That was easier than trying to face their inner conundrums. Because of this, they also turned a blind eye when more fervent haters of the child spoke out. They were too ashamed to admit that it felt a tiny bit vindicating, and just when these people bullied the child. Regardless of that, Naruto had some questions regarding the material he has read, and he decided to visit the local temple to hopefully ask the priest a couple of questions. Konoha was a ninja village and held no official faith, while the unofficial philosophy was that of the Will of Fire. Naruto read that if major ninja villages had official faiths, then it could ultimately lead to more wars. It could also potentially scare certain clients away. After all, there should be professional impartiality. Additionally, a ninja village is a military one cage is the god, and their word is the law. That's how they operated. But Konoha was also a fairly civil place, and there were no laws prohibiting from celebrating anyone's faith, as long as it didn't interfere with any business, be it civilian or ninja. Small community temples were allowed, but they were extremely rare in the village. There was a massive fire temple in no Kuni for these reasons. When Naruto visited one such small temple, which was more of a decorated gathering hall than a temple, he was a bit disappointed that the priest, a retired chunin, turned him away. But he understood the reasons most of his haters called him a demon, so Naruto reasoned these people must be at least a little bit religious, since demons were mostly mentioned in the books on religious topics. And he also knew he was in a good standing with the Hokage. If it reached Hokage's ears that there was an issue with the temple and Naruto, then surely they would face immediate closure regardless of circumstances. Naruto didn't hold it against the priest as he genuinely saw that the priest was upset he had to do it. Naruto bowed in respect as he read and then went to find his Jiji. Maybe he will have the answers after all, he was the smartest person Naruto knew. After a short while, we can find Naruto sitting in Hokage's office warmly smiling while Hiruzen waved his exasperated secretary out. Hokage tried to tell Naruto that it's impolite to just barge in and that he has to go through secretary, to which Naruto replied that it always takes ages and it's quicker to just come in. Hiruzen certainly didn't mind, but teaching the young boy manners was vital. They exchanged the general pleasantries and Hiruzen asked the boy why he came to see him. Well, Jiji. I finished reading all the books you gave me. They were really interesting. The Sandaime didn't let it show that he was surprised Naruto finished reading all the books so quickly. He was sure the boy would give up on the first book. Hiruzen silently berated himself he shouldn't think so lowly of Naruto. And I had some questions. It was really fascinating to read all about different myths and stories, and so they conversed for the next couple of minutes, with Hiruzen answering all the questions the young child had. He was marveling at the understanding the boy possessed. Come to think of it, Hiruzen mused, the academy starts around this time of the year and Naruto was of age to be enrolled. Yeah, I understand. Thank you Jiji. Do you have any more books? I read all these books and I don't believe that they have mentioned all the gods and beings. For example, in Myths and Stories there was a chapter about something called a Jashin, but it wasn't mentioned in any other books. Stories of the Night mentioned Amorio and the Land of Demons. So I believe there are many more things to read about. Hiruzen chuckled. Right you are. The elemental nations are rife with legends and myths. I will give you some more books tonight. But first, let's eat some ramen and discuss about you attending the academy. I believe you wanted to be a ninja. Naruto almost squealed in delight. Yes. Thank you Jiji. Just you wait, I will take that hat off you. Of course you will, the old man smiled. Later that night Naruto returned to his apartment having enjoyed his 6 ramen bowls and checked the books his Jiji gave him. He had a whole month to read them before the academy started. The Ninshu, Arcane. Truth or Myth, The Legends of Gods, They Who Walked Before. Naruto put the books down on the table and was about to go and have a glass of water before bed, but he accidentally knocked over some of the books. Ah! Naruto yelped. Sighing, he bent down to pick them up when noticed a book he overlooked before manifesting the power. Something about this book was odd. It was very plain, black, and looked more like a journal than a proper book. The feeling it gave off Naruto couldn't describe it, but he felt compelled to read it. Like it was calling to him. And so he settled on his bed and opened the first page and began reading. He stayed up until sunrise and almost finished the whole book. It was fascinating, Naruto thought with wonder. His observation from before was right, the book was written in a style of a journal. Almost like the author was compiling the knowledge as he learnt it. All kinds of gods and beings that he never heard of were written here, and the book mostly focused on the more practical aspects of worship. All kinds of rituals and ceremonies were described in a lot of detail. He learned about the ancient feasts of kami, the burial procedures of shinigami, there was even a couple of chapters on Jashinism and their combat ritualistic masochism. That especially fascinated Naruto to no end as a shinobi to be. He was interested in all kinds of techniques and, to be honest, immortality and being able to inflict the enemy with the same pain that you feel. The details were a bit grim at first, but the possibilities were endless. Naruto finally turned the final page and only one word was written there before the book was finished, almost like something happened to the author with how abrupt the end was. Ethrizin, he read out loud and hummed. Something twinged inside Naruto and made him feel a bit funny. With that he shut the book and, seeing what time it was, went to sleep. As he slept and dreamt of gods and spirits and fighting in a war of epic proportions in which he was the hero of all, something else was happening on the plane of all existence. Naruto's spoken word pierced through the veil, flew through time and space, vibrated throughout the arcane, and when it reached the deepest, hottest, most forgotten and abandoned depths of the netherworld, of hell all that remained was but a soft breath of eldritch particles. The veiny eyelid fluttered again, and for the first time in hundreds of millennia, it opened by a fraction of a centimeter, for a split second, before closing again. 1 month later, Naruto sat in front of the Hokage as he returned all of the books. "Hey, Gigi, do you know anything about Bethrizin?" I couldn't find anything about him. I even went to the library and tried to find something before the librarian kicked me out. The old Hokage mused as he blew out some smoke from his pipe. "I've never heard of Bethrizin. Where did you see it?" "In the book you gave me, Manifesting the Power. Only the name was mentioned, so I don't even know if it's a religion, or a story, or a god." Hirizin's eyes widened and he quickly became alert as put his pipe down. "My boy, I did not give you such a book. You are way too young to read something like that." Naruto frowned, stood up and picked up the book from the pile, and silently gave it to Hiruzen. The old man was quite astonished. Indeed, there it was. "Please give me a minute." With that, he disappeared in a blur. Naruto looked around the office and tried to spot any Anbu that he knew were hiding in the shadows. A couple of minutes passed when Hiruzen finally came back. "You truly need to hurry up and take this hat off me. I am getting senile in my old age," Hiruzen joked as he sat down. "Indeed, it seems I accidentally added that particular book into the pile when I was picking out something for you to read. I am truly sorry." Naruto, on his part, was quite confused why Hiruzen was apologizing and looking so defeated. When he voiced this, Hiruzen sighed. "The contents of that book are quite dark. Take for example the section about Jashinism. It's not something children your age should be reading. I had to grow up quicker than other kids, Gigi. Besides, I am about to start the ninja academy where we will be trained to be killers." This wasn't so bad. If anything, it was incredibly interesting that people could get all kind of boons through rituals dedicated to the gods. Why don't people do it all the time? "I am so sorry you have had to go through that much," Hiruzen said, "and that is an interesting topic to debate on. Even to this day there are no concrete evidence or facts to prove that those incredible feats were something else than just a Kekkei Genkai. In my scholarly opinion, it was family-related bloodlines that allowed people to perform all kinds of amazing feats. Even if they truly were miracles and powers granted by the divine, then you must understand it's so extremely rare for them to even look upon the earth. In legends it's always the most exceptional and unique people on whom the divine cast their gaze. And usually it always comes with a price. Such as Uzumaki clan being the only ones with the knowledge how to summon the shinigami who bestowed on them superior seals that could hold back even a Biju, but the cost of that was the soul of the summoner. Not that Hiruzen would reveal that. "I see, I understand, Gigi. Have you met anyone who was favored by something supernatural?" "I've met many individuals, and heard about even more, who claimed to be favored by the gods. Alas, in most cases they were just the tales of the crazed and delusional, or bearers of bloodlines. I remember there used to be a clan in Yugakure area some 100 years ago that worshipped Jashin. Only few of them managed to achieve the ritualistic immortality. You've read about that, correct?" Naruto nodded. "After they were wiped out, I haven't heard of anyone else achieving the same, which leads me to believe it was a family or clan-based bloodline. Sometimes, when you read about myths and legends you have to read what's written between the lines." "Written between the lines? There was nothing written there." Hiruzen chuckled. Good to know that despite Naruto's apparent leap in intelligence he was still a kid. It's a saying. Reading between the lines means looking underneath the underneath. Meanings of things that are not written but implied. Looking for the hidden truths, etc. The light bulb went off in Naruto's head. "Oh, I see. Now regarding this book. As much as I wouldn't want to talk about this I feel like we must because you've read it." His expression changed and he regarded Naruto with a serious piercing gaze. "I hope you didn't try anything that was written in the book." Naruto couldn't help but gulp at the sudden change of Hokage's demeanor. "Well no, I didn't try anything." The hesitation in his voice made Hiruzen narrow his eyes. "Why the hesitation?" "I swear, I didn't try anything." Naruto waved his hands trying to placate the old man. "It's just, I don't know. That book kind of called to me." The last part was phrased as a question as if he himself wasn't sure. "And I felt a bit funny when I read that word on the last page. But I think it was just me being tired. I stayed up all night reading it." And that was true. He definitely felt something when he first laid eyes on it, some kind pull. Naruto struggled to express what exactly it was. Hiruzen picked up his pipe again and mindlessly lit it with an expert display of Kaiten chakra manipulation while he thought about what the boy told him. He picked up the book in question and opened the last page. Nothing there, it was just the closing paragraphs of the author summing up the book. No mention of this Bethrizin. He did joke earlier that he was going senile in his old age, but that's all, it was a joke. The developed chakra in his body significantly reduced the chances of ever getting any kind of mental affliction. While his body is not as sturdy as it used to be in his prime, his mind remained just as sharp. So he knew for a fact he didn't give Naruto this book, yet the very same book was missing from his personal library. Then this unexplainable word Naruto claimed he saw. As much as he wanted to boil it down to kid's fantasy, something prevented him from doing it. He didn't mislead the boy either when he said that in his lifetime he had met and heard about people claiming divine intervention. All of them had a common denominator, the so-called unexplainable pull. While Hiruzen didn't hesitate even for a second to mark most of such tales as rubbish, he couldn't in good conscience dismiss such claims either. He was a scholar after all, and most, if not all, legends have a sliver of truth in them. The summoning of Shinigami of Uzumaki clan is the proof of that. He let out a puff of smoke and with minor chakra manipulation, turned it into a perfect ring and blew it towards Naruto. The boy was getting nervous and this little trick immediately brightened him up. Hiruzen now was certain that the events that transpired with the boy in the past few months were not random. Loath he was to admit anything of the sorts, he was not superstitious, a cage is not superstitious, but if his instincts told him to regard this with the same seriousness as he would do any important mission, then he would listen to them. He didn't get to live as long as he had by ignoring his own senses. Now what to do with this revelation? He knew he was being too hasty. But at the same time, he had to think of the village too. He absolutely hated to admit it, but Naruto was a living weapon. His father made it so, and Naruto's future was already predetermined to be full of battles and strife for the sake of the village. He tried to convince himself that Naruto did have a choice, but he knew that was just a lie. The choice was made for him all those years ago when the Kyuubi was sealed into him. If Naruto was to come into possession of a boon on a similar level as those of legends, then it would benefit the village greatly. Even a minor benefit from any divine favor would aid the boy and the village. A certain warmonger would say Hiruzen is too soft and it's because of him that Konoha is no longer the strongest of the five, but no one would deny his love for the village and its inhabitants. Again, he was getting ahead of himself, but he truly cared for the boy and if that meant supporting him on something so extremely obscure, then he would do so. He won't shun him like so many others do. For the sake of Naruto. And the village. Seeing that Naruto was getting nervous again over his prolonged silence, he finally spoke. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, I'm not angry and you are not in trouble. Tell me, while you were reading it, did you feel any kind of particular interest to any of the specific chapters? This would be the first step to see what kind of forces Naruto attracted. All of them were equally interesting, Jiji. Naruto exclaimed. Hiruzen had to withhold a wince. If the boy considered things like mutilation and ritualistic cannibalism interesting, then chances are there is something mentally wrong with the child. But we all become killers and murderers as soon as we can crawl. In hindsight, this is pretty normal, he thought. There was also a lot of information on a lot of the things that the book talked about, Naruto said and then frowned, but one thing confuses me. What is it? As I said, when I turned the last page, there was only one word written there and nothing else. Almost like the author forgot to finish it. All it said was Betrayal. I see. Sorry, Naruto-kun, but I truly never heard of it. I will have a look, maybe it's something that has escaped my memory. Ah, that's alright, Jiji. Listen, Naruto-kun. If anything strange or out of the ordinary ever happens, please come and let me know, alright? Of course, Jiji. Now, let's talk about the academy. It will start next week. The rest of the talk was about lighter topics such as upcoming lessons, aspirations, and goals. Naruto was quite eager to start the academy, and the sensei urged the boy to fully apply himself in all the lessons. Naruto also asked for various training tips. Afterwards, Naruto had some light lunch at Ichiraku's, and he went on a stroll to try and find some training ground where he could practice what the sensei has told him. Later that night, when Naruto returned home, he noticed an inconspicuous-looking book on his kitchen table. Apart from Naruto himself, only sensei had access to his apartment, so it wasn't such a big leap of logic for the boy to think it was his Jiji who dropped off the book. The cover seemed to be made out of surprisingly soft leather, dark crimson in color. There was a piece of white thread binding the book shut. When Naruto picked it up, there was the tiniest wave of warmth spreading across his body. Such a fleeting feeling that Naruto almost missed it. When he took a closer look, he was surprised to note there was no title anywhere. Naruto, tired but eager, went to his bed to read it in comfort. He untied the binding, looping it around the book 3 times, and opened the first page. As he did so, another wave of warmth spread across his body. I am the last loyal disciple of Betrayal. My name is unimportant and neither is my story. This is the 13th epoch and my god and master is silent. It's been centuries since we have last heard him or seen his messengers. As the epoch draws to a close and the people of Navender are becoming extinct, many believe the gods have either abandoned us or are dead and gone. I suppose there are more important things in our current age or survival than prayers and sacrifices that fall on silent ears. Even the children of the accursed Highfather are losing their healing powers by the day. No one currently alive has seen a miracle performed. As I am writing this, I can feel our days are numbered. Nevertheless, it is my duty to Bethrisen to archive and immortalize some of the history, beliefs, customs, and anything else that I will deem to be of importance. And this is exactly that, a journal and an archive. My master might be silent and gone, but I have utter faith in him. He will rise once more to reclaim Navender as his. I am writing this in hopes that someday, someone will pick up the candle and sing glory to Bethrisen. Before death claims me, I will do my master proud and sacrifice my flesh and soul, so that my death is not in vain. If you are reading this, then congratulations, you are a survivor of the cataclysm, and it's now up to you to sing glory to Bethrisen and make the world tremble before his infernal might. Naruto was truly fascinated. So Bethrisen was a god of some sorts. Navender. Distant land or a country. 13th epoch. How comes he has never heard of anything like that? He was getting mild headache from all the new information, and he tried really hard to process it. But the other books, it was simple things he was reading about, were already more or less understandable as they existed in his time, and it was easy to relate to them. This spoke of things he has never even heard about. Naruto decided to call it a night and visit Jiji tomorrow to thank him for the book and to ask a couple of questions. Naruto was sure the sensei will know something. As he lay in his bed and drifted off to sleep, there was one thing on his mind. Singing glory to Bethrisen. At night he dreamt of conquests, of chains, of fiery spells, and winged beings. The next day Naruto sped towards Hokage's tower with his new book in hand, quite excited to have a conversation with Sandaime regarding his discovery. Naruto barged through the doors, completely ignoring the secretary who shouted after him, and ran up the stairs and quickly entered Sandaime's office before the secretary could catch up with him. He had to abruptly stop in his tracks when he saw another man in the office, standing in front of the desk seemingly engrossed in a conversation with the Hokage. The man wore the standard Jonin uniform, had gravity-defying silver hair, a mask covering his mouth and nose, and headband covering one of his eyes. The man turned around and when he saw Naruto he gave an eye smile and a wave. Yo. Hiruzen couldn't help but sigh. Kakashi, you have your orders. You are free to go. Hi, Hokage-sama, Kakashi replied and casually left. Naruto-kun, how many times do I have to tell you to ask the secretary if I am available? He waved the said secretary away, at least knock before entering. Sorry Jiji. I promise I will knock next time. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. See that you do, Hiruzen replied. Sometimes one just had to be strict to teach a lesson. Now, what happened? We only spoke yesterday and you are already back. Did something happen? No. Well, sort of. Naruto took a seat in front of the desk as he usually did and put the crimson book down on the table. I wanted to say thanks for the book you dropped off last night and just wanted to discuss it for a bit. Now this alarmed the old Hokage. I didn't give you any book yesterday. Did you see someone enter and leave your apartment? Eh? No, I didn't see anyone. I was training for the whole day, doing some exercises you told me about, and when I came home I saw it on my kitchen table. I assumed it was you who left it there. Hearing this he relaxed a bit. Maybe he wasn't hasty in his musings yesterday after all. I see. May I? He asked as he indicated towards the book. Of course, Jiji. Hiruzen picked up the book and marveled at the soft leather. Just like Naruto yesterday, he looked at both sides and noticed there was no title. Silently humming, he opened the book and his eyebrows shot up so high that they almost disappeared behind his hairline. All he could see were strange symbols and squiggles, marks and drawings, lines and some geometrical shapes that were written in a black ink. If it was supposed to be a language, then it wasn't any he has ever seen before. He looked up from the book. Naruto-kun, you can read this? Furrowing his brows in confusion, he replied with an uncertain yes. It's just like any other book I've read. I see. When Hiruzen looked back at the book, his eyebrows threatened to disappear behind his hairline again. Where before there was something on the pages, now they were completely blank, as if nothing has ever been on them in the first place. So his instincts were right, there are some higher forces at play here. Clearly whatever was written here was intended for Naruto's eyes only. Nevertheless, he had to be sure it wasn't anything that could harm the boy. Do you mind if I keep it for the day? It wasn't me who gave it to you, so I would like to run some checks on the book to make sure it's safe and there are no hidden traps on it. If it turns out to be harmless, then I will return the book later tonight. Naruto wasn't sure how a book was dangerous, to which the Sandaime explained the basics of Fuinjutsu and how, in this case, it could have been used to harm someone from a long distance. After that Naruto agreed without any further protests. The next couple of minutes were then spent Naruto retelling what he learned so far. To say that Hiruzen was both baffled and fascinated was an understatement. I see now why you took such interest to it. Indeed, I know nothing of what you just said. Maybe one of my scholar friends across the elemental nations would have heard something, but I wouldn't want to bother them with something that's not quite an emergency. It could be long forgotten history, or it could be a simple tale. You will have to read further if the book is clean of any traps. Shortly afterwards Naruto left the office to go and find somewhere to train. The most peculiar thing happened afterwards. As soon as Hiruzen felt that Naruto has left the building, he turned his gaze towards the book that innocently sat on his table. Only for the book to disappear in a tiny puff of smoke. Interesting. I will have to keep an eye on Naruto-kun and move these conversations elsewhere. If there are indeed higher forces at play, then it's important to keep them secret. Wouldn't do well for rumors to start spreading based on mere speculation. He stood up and approached the window to look over the village. It is yet to be determined whether it will be a boon to the village or a curse to the boy. 6 months later. The last 6 months passed relatively quickly for Naruto. His mornings were busy with the academy, then afterwards he would spend the whole day training. He took Sandame's words to heart. Sadly, some of the instructors in the academy weren't happy that the demon was allowed into academy and went out of their way to sabotage him, which resulted in being dead last so quick. Other instructors who didn't mind or care much about Naruto, like the rest of the village, turned a blind eye to it. They saw that the boy was intelligent and quick to learn things, but they didn't go out of their way to help him in fear of being ostracized by their peers. His relationship with his classmates were kind of shaky as well. He was super excited when he first attended, hoping that he would get some new friends, but his hopes were crushed. Most of the people in attendance were civilian kids, and naturally their parents warned them about Naruto when they saw he too is attending. The clan children, however, were tolerable, and he got along with them well. But them being from clans meant that they already interacted with each other for years before academy and have formed their own friendship groups, so despite them being neutral and even friendly to Naruto, he still felt like an odd one out. He was happy however to see the lavender-haired girl was in attendance too. On the first day Naruto ran up to her, grabbed her hands and told her he was super happy she was alright and asked what her name was. The girl managed to squeal Hinata before promptly fainting. Now that creeped Naruto out a bit. His new schedule also meant that he stayed away from the public's eyes, and Naruto noticed that people's perception of him changed a tiny bit. He still was regarded with cold indifference, but now there was a bit of warmth there too. Not enough to make a difference, but enough for Naruto to notice. Seems like not being in their faces, so to speak, allowed the people to work on their issues regarding the boy. During the evenings and nights he would obsess over Disciples' Archive, as he started to call it. No matter how much he read, it always seemed to never end. There was something new to discover which would then prompt him to reread previous pages to better understand them with the new information. And there was a lot of information, things that boggled Naruto's mind. The birth of Navender, the history of gods and their many wars, tales of different races. Many times he would think the things written in these pages were pure fantasy of a very creative individual. But his soul disagreed. He always felt warm and pleasant when reading it. He knew that despite how fantastical all of it was true. At some point he learned that the god the last disciple worshipped was not pure or benign. He was a cast-off angel who was chained in hell, overtaken by rage and hatred. His children demons. His gift to humanity pain and suffering. His goals conquest, subjugation and destruction of Navender. At least it was in some previous epochs before the time of the author. The author stated that throughout the centuries many things have changed including approach to goals. And as Bethrazen's voice grew quieter, so did the malice of his followers. The book contained records of different rituals and customs that were practiced throughout the centuries and how they changed with time. Not in much detail, but more of an overall historic overview. When Naruto discovered the nature of Bethrazen, he was in a bit of a loss with himself. He thought that Bethrazen stood for something good, but it sounded like he was evil instead. But Naruto's problem wasn't with that, no. What concerned him was that he didn't care about this revelation. He didn't care about all the dark things he read about, didn't care about him being father of demons and lord of hell, didn't care about any of that. He realized the more he read and submerged himself in the book, the more he felt connected to the old world as he dubbed it. He felt that everything was right and as it should be. Naturally, Naruto approached the Hokage with this dilemma. Surprisingly for Naruto, Hiruzen took the young boy on a stroll in the outskirts of the village to discuss this. When Naruto told Hiruzen all his findings, he fell silent for a couple of minutes. His face was perfectly blank, but Naruto knew him enough to see he was deep in thought. When he spoke again, it was to ask a very simple question. Naruto, why do you want to be a shinobi? Why do you want to be a Hokage? Naruto was a bit surprised by the sudden change of topic and for some reason he felt a massive amount of pressure answering it. Almost like the course of his life would change depending on his answer. So, like Hiruzen, he took time in thinking it over. Indeed, why did he want to become a Hokage? Before it was to get the respect of people, to be recognized. And he always wanted to be shinobi to be able to throw all those flashy jutsus. But, he realized, those reasons have shifted. Yes, he still wanted to be respected and acknowledged, but now there was so much more. He remembered that day when Hinata was being bullied in the forest. How those bullies surrounded her, and then him. He didn't hold ill will towards them. He knew that their behavior was a byproduct of their parents' ignorance. Kids imitate what they perceive they see and hear. They will learn in time. But then he imagined the same scene, but with outsider, with adults picking on the girl, or even enemy ninja threatening life of poor Hinata. He then imagined the same scene with any citizen of Konoha as the victim, even the ones who hated him. And he was overtaken by a sudden rage, and that's when he realized and understood. I want to become strong so that I can be feared, I want to be strong and respected so I can protect my people and my village. I don't want what happened to Hinata to happen to anyone else in this village. Hiruzen allowed a smile to grace his lips. Naruto's words were genuine, true, and full of conviction. The boy was truly the bearer of the will of fire. Recent revelations told Hiruzen that Naruto is on a dark path and there is nothing he could do about it. The least he could do is to guide him in a way that would positively benefit the village and its people. While he vowed to support Naruto in whatever speciality that he chose or chose him, he would not allow another Orochimaru to raise. He didn't know exactly what the future awaited, but he could deduce from what Naruto told him that it wouldn't be all smiles and rainbows. Swear to me, Naruto, that you will never harm a citizen of Konoha. Naruto turned to the Sandaime, shock evident on his face. I would never. Why would you even say that? It's always good to be sure of your own convictions. Always remember that. Just because you don't feel repulsion or disgust to something doesn't necessarily mean there is something wrong with you. We live in a shinobi world where everyone performs unspeakable acts. The choices and the reasons you do things is what makes you a person. You might kill people in the future when on missions, but by doing so you are protecting the people of Konoha. You might be exposed to conflict between villages, but all of that is for the betterment of Konohan people. Always remember that. For the village and its people. Naruto repeated. Hiruzen nodded. For the village and its people. The child was still ignorant of his possible future, and some part of Hiruzen was glad about that. It meant he could enjoy his childhood for a while longer. Maybe he should contact Jiraiya and ask him to investigate any rumors of cults and individuals he may have heard about. The elemental nations were full of all kinds of surprises, and any information could potentially explain what is happening to the boy and prepare them better on how to approach it. The pair spent some time together, chatting and discussing various topics, with Naruto asking for more training tips. Later that night when Naruto returned home he picked up the book and resumed reading it with vigor. He couldn't explain it, but there was an underlying feeling of need to keep reading it. Like it was important. Naruto realized that ever since he expressed his, albeit childish, interest in demons that his life turned for the better. He realized his own intelligence, discovered his love for reading and learning, ended up spending more time with Jiji, became a bit more cool-headed, and even the villagers' attitude changed a bit. He chose to ignore that it was simply because he wasn't wrecking mayhem as much anymore. When he went to sleep that night he dreamt of blood and fire, of protecting the weak, of glory and conquests. In the deepest, hottest, most forgotten and abandoned depths of the netherworld, of hell cracked, red lips opened and released a breath before shutting. A breath so minuscule that it wouldn't even lift a feather, yet that breath held everything. The rest of Naruto's day passed the same way as the others, attending the academy in the morning, training during daytime, and reading during the evenings. Until a month later when something happened that definitely changed the course of Naruto's life. 1 month later, as Naruto lay in the hospital bed he couldn't help but contemplate on today's events. While he was training until late evening in a remote training ground on the outskirts of the village, he saw a suspicious-looking man with a massive sack moving through the shadows. The man was trying to be as inconspicuous as possible while also being in a hurry. Having a bad feeling about this, Naruto chose to follow him. The man quickly discovered that he had a tail in the form of a young kid, and instead of running for it, he decided to deal with him. As it turned out the man was a ninja of Kumo, and the sack actually contained Hinata. This scene made him remember how he imagined bullies surrounding the poor girl. Getting angry that someone would do something so unspeakable to a Konoha citizen, Naruto engaged the enemy ninja in a fierce taijutsu battle. At least Naruto thought it was fierce. In fact, it was pathetic. He was a fresh academy student with the most basic taijutsu skills. The enemy easily beat Naruto, but instead of just finishing it and retreating with the Hyuga, in his infinite wisdom, he decided to toy and beat up Naruto. And that was all it took for Anbu and Hinata's father to reach the scene and rescue them. Last he remembered before passing out was Hiashi delivering a debilitating strike and wishing that it was him who did that instead. Once again he was powerless to do anything. It was a small miracle that there were already people chasing after the enemy. As Naruto lay in the hospital bed he vowed to get stronger so that no one will have to go through something like that again. A new fire was ignited in his heart and his resolution was stronger than ever. No point crying over what happened, better to take it as a learning experience. He had to remain in the hospital overnight but was free to go the next day. When he arrived home, a new book was inconspicuously waiting for him on the kitchen table. This one, like Disciples' Archive, was made of soft leather but was black in color, had no title, and was bound with a white string. In his excitement he disregarded the question of where it came from and quickly sat down at the kitchen table and opened it. Now, unlike the last book, this one was very different. There was no introduction, no table of contents. A simple question sat at the very top of the page. Do you desire power? Now here is where Naruto felt a bit wary. Despite his instincts urging him to proceed, he wanted to exercise some caution. Those were one of the first lessons in the academy. It's not every day a book randomly appears in your home, and he assumed it was not the sensei who dropped it off as was the case with the previous one and asks you something. But he couldn't ignore his instincts. And he remembered the vow he made earlier. Stronger no matter what, no matter the cost. So there was only one answer to that question. Yes. Was uttered silently, but with conviction. And nothing happened. Now, how to convey that to the book? Contents of the book convey their messages through the medium of written words, so maybe I could try that. Naruto quickly scurried over to a cupboard in his living room and got some brushes and ink that he used in the academy. He came back to the table and cleanly wrote yes under the question. He always had very neat and clean calligraphy. As soon as he finished the last brush stroke, Naruto was startled to see another question form under his answer. Why? This time Naruto didn't hesitate to write his answer. To protect my village. To protect my people. To crush any enemies I might have in the future. No matter the cost. The protector. Noble. Are you willing to walk the path together with Valnaern? A moment of hesitation from what he read. He already had an idea of what that entailed and he was surprised how easily the answer came. Yes. No matter the cost. No matter the cost, he wrote, and then quickly added, for my people and my future. Then welcome, disciple, young initiate of the path of the damned. I bestow upon you the tools that will help you on your chosen path. Make your enemies quiver in fear. No one will dare to touch what is yours. Sing glory to Valnaern. And with that all the words scattered like dust in the wind and new words began to form. Words upon words, ink over ink, diagrams, drawings, illustrations. When the first page was complete, it turned on to the next page, and then the next and the next and the next, picking up with speed until in a matter of seconds the book slammed shut at the end. And the only thing Naruto could feel was elation and freedom and an unexplainable warmth that spread across his whole body. Unbeknownst to him, the seal on his stomach flashed for a second before fading again, the edges of it becoming crimson. He touched the book and yelped. Looking at this hand, he saw a tiny puncture in his finger where some blood was leaking. Thanks to his amazing regenerative ability, it was closing before his very eyes. He wiped the blood away and looked at the book with furrowed brows. Some of this blood was on the book, but he noticed that it was rapidly being absorbed by the leather. Uncertainly flipping the book, he opened the first page. Welcome, initiate. This book will teach you everything you need to know about manipulation of demonic energies, conducting rituals, hurting your enemies, and many other things to make the living fear you while bringing glory to Valnaern. Chapter 1, Blood and Other Things You Must Know. Naruto was grinning in happiness as he kept reading. This will make all his ambitions come true. So engrossed he was that he didn't even notice as the sun was already rising. At the same time, in the deepest, hottest, most forgotten and abandoned depths of the netherworld, of hell, a veiny eyelid fluttered, and then in a moment of revelation, it snapped open quarter way. And stayed open as an enormous tear slowly rolled off it. Chapter 2, Victory. First and not the last. Naruto, now 13, stood atop the Hokage monument on the Yondame's head and looked over the village. The sun has just started to peek over the horizon, slowly banishing the shadows that were cascading away over the trees and buildings. The air was moist with the retreating night's chill, and the streets devoid of life, fully silent. The village was still sleeping. It's been a while since Naruto required full night's sleep. Ever since he began practicing infernal arts, as he started calling it, he noticed he needed less and less sleep to the point he could easily get away with only 2-hour nap. Over the course of 5 years that developed into dark bags under his eyes. A small price to pay for getting more hours out of the day. That being said, he still woke up fully rested every single time. If anything, he was sleeping better now. The day is the day he will be graduating the academy, and next week he will get a team and start going on missions. He was excited for his future. As Naruto watched the sun rise more and more over the horizon, he reminisced on the past few years and contemplated his progress. He came to realize that infernal arts were not just a list of jutsus you learn and perform, it was a whole lifestyle. The disciple's manual, as he dubbed the book, didn't lie when it said Path of the Damned. Every time he touched the book he'd bleed from his hand. After reading the first chapter he quickly learned that everything has a price and most things just needed blood, and the book's price of learning its secrets just happened to be a bit of Naruto's blood. It was also an offering to Valnaern since it was through him that he was in the possession of the book. He quickly learned to give his thanks every time. At some point Naruto also felt that with every opening of the book something inside him was changing. Physically, his pain tolerance grew exponentially each time he felt the sudden pinch in his palm less and less until he felt nothing at all. Eventually, through one particular event, he discovered that his pain tolerance grew so much that he wouldn't even bat an eye if his palm got stabbed. The infernal arts were challenging, difficult, but extremely rewarding. Flashback, Naruto, at 10 years old, hit his first roadblock ever since he came into possession of the disciple's manual. It's been over a year and a half now, and the most he has done was reading and committing to memory all the material available to him, including the archive in conjunction with manual for better understanding, and that included learning a whole new language, which was a challenge of its own. He also practiced some minor beginner rituals as instructed. These rituals were self-sufficient in terms he only needed himself. Cutting his palm with something sharp and using it to draw a simple circle around himself, and a short incantation and prayer in the ancient tongue. The effects were instantaneous, a massive draw on his chakra and the circle around him igniting crimson red before the blood dispersed in the air. And the next moment, the chakra he spent was returned to him with additional effects based on the incantation: stamina regeneration, healing, cleansing, relaxant, exhaustion prevention, muscle soother and so on. Minor effects, but these rituals served their purpose. You had to do one at least once a week to cleanse yourself. Cleansing was another way of paying tribute to Valnaern, while also allowing more power to be channeled. The other purpose was teaching. It was the basis of all other rituals, combat or not, and also allowed initiates to practice making their own incantations. And that's what most rituals were. You were given a base, and then you finish it as you see fit. If you did it correctly and channeled sufficient power into your incantation, then Valnaern would reward you with an effect you asked for. But then the disciples' archive speculated that it wasn't so much Valnaern rewarding every single ritual, but rather you being successful in correctly manipulating the power via the words in your incantation. Valnaern already bestowed upon you the power, you just had to learn to correctly manipulate it. Naruto didn't know which was true, but then he thought it made sense. You won't create, learn, or perform jutsus on the first try until you learn the correct sequence of hand seals and the chakra required. And then it happened. The book just ended. The last paragraph of the chapter he was reading ended perfectly at the end of the page, and for the life of him he couldn't open the next page. All it said was to proceed. He had to perform an intermediate level ritual, which is the next step after what he has been doing. Now, intermediate rituals were no longer small short-term effects, but something permanent. And thus required more materials. Namely, a living sacrifice. Surprisingly, Naruto didn't even think twice about that. Perhaps that was the effect of the change he was feeling, he mused. What he did was reread the whole content that was available to him and chose what kind of ritual he wanted to do exactly. Then, when he found the base of the ritual he wanted to use, he spent several days perfecting the incantation. And finally procuring the sacrifice, which had to be living still. Now, because this would be something that would potentially be permanent on his body, even if a minor effect, Naruto deemed it something the Sandaime would claim as dangerous and out of the ordinary. He remembered Jiji's plea and warning to tell him if he ever attempted something like that. Besides, he needed some help with this matter too, and it's been a while since he chatted with the old man. Naruto knocked on the doors to Sandaime's office and entered when he was called in. "Hello Jiji. Naruto-kun. So good to see you. Shall we take a stroll?" "Yes, please." Hiruzen warmly smiled and led the boy out. He was happy to see that Naruto managed to tame his endless energy and become a bit more cool-headed. He will surely miss the exuberant child, but he knew everyone grew up at some point. They didn't see each other that often anymore, what with Hiruzen being busy with the office and Naruto being busy with academy, training, and his extracurricular training. Yes, Hiruzen knew of some things. Naruto has told him enough to placate the old man that he wasn't in much danger. Naruto never went into much detail about the practical side, but Hiruzen was smart enough to piece together what Naruto wasn't saying and deduce that whatever it was bloody. Every time Naruto visited him he felt that Naruto's chakra was getting a little bit denser and his presence a little more imposing. He also looked a lot healthier, except the bags under eyes. Thus, Hiruzen chose to blissfully ignore things that Naruto implied but never outright told him. They were walking through the village when Naruto finally spoke. "I need your help with something." A moment of hesitation. "I've hit a wall in my training." "Ah, so Naruto wants to let him in a bit, I see. And how may I help, exactly?" Despite his willingness to help the boy, Hiruzen wasn't sure he'd be up to doing something morbid. He was a ninja, sure, but if he had the choice of avoiding doing something that made him uncomfortable, then he would gladly do so. So really, it depended on what Naruto wanted. Sensing old man's mild discomfort, Naruto hurriedly tried to placate him. "Don't worry, you won't have to actually do anything. I need to do a certain ritual which is more complex than the ones I did before. I have all I will need apart from a place where I can do it." He looked up to Hokage. "I don't know what will happen during it or if there will be any leakage of chakra. Don't want to upset the villagers. And I didn't want to spend time walking outside village looking for anything, so thought I might as well ask you." Hiruzen hummed and understood Naruto's dilemma. There was one place he could show the boy very well. "There is one place that I suppose I could share with you. Follow me." "Oh, great. We will need to drop by my apartment first to collect my materials." The Hokage nodded and they did just that. When Naruto left his apartment, Hiruzen raised an eyebrow but otherwise didn't comment on the makeshift cage that contained a hair or the kitchen knife that Naruto quickly pocketed in one of his pouches. They quickly made their way outside the village and after some minutes of walking finally reached what appeared to be a cliff hidden between thick trees. Naruto was confused as it seemed this was the dead end, but then he saw Hiruzen perform a couple of hand seals and put his hands on the cliff. There was a brief ripple where he touched and an entrance was revealed with stairs that lead down. Naruto was amazed and gaped at the old man. Hiruzen's response was to chuckle Jinjutsu and Fuinjutsu. Don't look like that, you need to be an expert sensor to even spot this. He then gestured towards the stairs that were lit by some torches. Shall we? Only the Hokages and their most trusted and immediate family know of this. Needless to say this is secure. Naruto was touched that he put so much trust in him. He wanted to ask what the purpose of this place was but decided against. He needed to focus on what he needed to do. As they descended deeper they passed several doors until the staircase seemed to expand and reveal a big cave at the end of it. The cave itself looked like a room carved right into the rock. It was possibly done with Doton manipulation. You can use this, Naruto nodded as he inspected the space. Naruto-kun, do you mind if I stay and observe? This old man is really curious about the things you've been learning. Did Hiruzen think Naruto's speciality was a bit dark and uncomfortable? Yes. Perhaps even a bit morbid. Definitely. But Hiruzen was a scholar at heart and in all of his long life, he has never actually met someone who has been granted tools and ways to communicate with some higher power. He was absolutely curious to see something in action that he has only read about. Naruto thought about it for a bit and he thought it wouldn't be such a bad idea to have someone nearby on his first time in case something happens. Sure, old man, he looked at the Hokage with serious face expression, but in no circumstances you are to interfere at any point during the ritual. At least not until all the lines disappear. I am not a master of this craft yet and this is my first time performing on this level. This ritual is meant to affect me, so if something goes wrong because you did something, then I am not sure if I would be able to fix it on the spot. Understood. Hiruzen was surprised at his tone of voice and was a tiny bit alarmed when he said it is meant to affect him, but he didn't let it show on his face. He merely nodded understood. And so he went to stand at a far wall, thus silently indicating that Naruto may start any time. Naruto took a big breath, then got to work. He cleared his mind and calmed his nerves. He could do this, no biggie. He took the hair out of the cage and put the cage away, then approached the middle of the cave. He closed his eyes, centering himself, remembering what he learned. Big breath in, hold, exhale. In, hold, exhale. He snapped his eyes open as they blazed with determination and he methodically got to work. He brandished the knife and without hesitation, made a small cut on his arm and chanted, "For Bethrizin I spill my blood." Once again Hiruzen's eyebrows disappeared in his hairline in surprise. Whatever language he was speaking in, he couldn't even begin to understand it. But it felt powerful and meaningful, rhythmical and strong. Almost like a strong staccato that reverberated against the walls. The only way Hiruzen could describe it was ancient. Naruto continued his work. He quickly kneeled and stabbed the hair, then sharply twisted the knife to make more blood spill from it. "For Bethrizin I offer this sacrifice." Laying the hair down, Naruto used the now bloody knife to draw a large circle, him and the hair being the center of it. "Let this circle be the sign of my unity with my master." Then, he drew a 5-point star, a pentagram, with the points touching the edge of the circle. Here he also began channeling some of his power. "Accept this offering on all planes of existence, devour its essence." Suddenly, the 5 points that touched the circles burst into crimson flame, which calmly remained there and illuminated the cave in an eerie light. Then, in a flash, Naruto flipped the knife in reverse grip and stabbed his palm right through, making his blood gush on the floor and on top of the hair. He was marveling that he didn't even feel an ounce of pain. Focusing back on the task, he slammed his bleeding hand on the floor. "I join my blood with this hair's, for this hair is yours as is my blood." Upon these words the small pool of blood that was forming under his palm quickly flowed and trickled outside the circle and formed a hexagon with some edges of it touching and overlapping with the circle. At the same time, the hair in the middle glowed in crimson light before it started getting absorbed into the pentagram and the circle. Layer by layer fur went first, then the skin, the muscles, the sinew, organs, and finally bones, each of those fueling the flames on the 5 points until there was no longer anything left of the hair. "I beseech you, I beg of you, grant me the blessing of this offering, its agility and speed." The flames flashed once and then, as if by an invisible force, they stretched and traced the lines of the pentagram, absorbing the blood into them, before starting to circle the circle of blood and merging with it, casting the cave into a crimson-purple glow. "So that my enemies would never escape and I would never be caught, all in the name of Bethrizin. None shall run for none can escape his glory." And with the final incantation, the fiery glowing circle merged with the hexagon before the very same flame rushed at and into Naruto from all the 6 sides. going into him, through him, over him, all around him. Naruto's back snapped straight from his hunched position, his head thrown back as his eyes rolled backwards and his mouth opened in a silent scream. But it was not out of pain, but of pure exhilaration and ecstasy. Power like no other flowed through him. His muscles spasmed, expanded and contracted, his nerves were on fire, his whole body twitching. And all the while there was no pain, no suffering, only pure unadulterated pleasure, happiness, and joy. Then it all abruptly stopped, the flames dispersed in the air, and Naruto fell on the ground. He was breathing hard as some of his muscles still twitched. Hiruzen snapped out of his morbid, fascinated shock and rushed to Naruto, but abruptly stopped when he saw the now charred hexagon still surrounding Naruto. He remembered his warning, at least not until all the lines disappear. He was very much out of his depth, so he took the boy's warning to heart. Very little parts of the whole process reminded Hiruzen of some old Fuinjutsu, and he knew how finicky that art could be. And it was clear that what he just witnessed wasn't just some simple Fuinjutsu either, but something else. Wanting nothing more than to check if the boy is okay, but not wanting to disrupt the boundary of the hexagon, he steeled his nerves and just waited. A minute later that felt like 100 hours, Naruto stopped twitching and his breath calmed down. And with that the charred hexagon dispersed like dust in the wind, leaving no traces that something extraordinary happened here. Hiruzen took that as his cue to rush to Naruto. "Naruto-kun. Are you alright?" "Yeah," he said with a smile as he managed to sit up. "I am more than fine. Exhausted, but otherwise good." The Sandaime sighed in relief, and Naruto was happy to know that someone truly cared. "What happened? What did you do?" Hiruzen had so many questions and the child actually laughed. If he wasn't the Hokage, a veteran ninja, then Hiruzen would have huffed. "I guess you didn't understand a word," Naruto chuckled. "In short, the ritual sacrificed the hair to Betrayal, and in return I asked to be granted agility and speed. That's the short of it." "I see. And did it work?" Naruto had the decency to smirk. "Oh yeah, it did, old man. To what extent, that's something I will need to test. But right now I am hungry and exhausted." Afterwards they chatted for a bit more before having some food. It was still daytime, so the Sandaime had to return to his duties while Naruto returned home. He quickly opened the disciple's manual and was pleased to know that more pages and information was unlocked for him. He turned on to the next page and read, "Congratulations, young disciple, for successfully completing your first intermediate ritual and receiving the blessing of the hair. Be warned, however, the blessing doesn't give you something that you don't have. It merely amplifies what you already possess or unlocks direct hidden potentials. Therefore, to keep the boons you have been granted, you have to practice different other crafts. If you don't, then like all things the effect of the ritual will wane. Betrayal doesn't look kindly on the weak and the lazy. Something to note, however, which is a discovery, is that the effects of the ritual has been amplified due to the presence of chakra in your time and age and your body. There are no foreseen negative consequences in any of the practices written in this book. For what is chakra? Merely a manifestation of physical and spiritual energies. However, proceed with caution, for the added element of chakra might amplify any and all results. Control is everything for the desired results. Nevertheless, Betrayal favors you. You are no longer an initiate of the path of the damned. You are now an adept. New information has been revealed for you." How did it know what exactly he did? Of course, the blood offering when he opens the book. Seems like the book had some sort of sentience if it was able to analyze him based on his blood and then form a response. But it was also an interesting thought. The book said that his chakra was a discovery for it, meaning it didn't know about its existence and therefore indirectly implying that chakra didn't exist in the old world. He sighed. With this new revelation he will need to reread some chapters of the archive. Understanding these new powers and their origin is important for Naruto. And with that he chose to go to bed. There was loads of work to be done still. Flashback end. And indeed there was lots of work to be done. The blessing of the hair exponentially amplified his speed and agility. When he showed the results to Hiruzen, the old man was definitely shocked when he saw Naruto move with the speed of a Chunin while also doing flips, cartwheels, and otherwise showing off his newfound acrobatic prowess. It was also a day of great humor to Hiruzen. The new speed was, well, new for Naruto, which resulted in the boy crashing in a lot of trees while showing off. He was glad that he let Hiruzen on when he did. He gave all kinds of training tips to help him take control and get used to his new speed. The book didn't lie when it said that receiving the blessing was just the first step and that the second step involved to actually build and develop further yourself. When the book said practice different other crafts, Naruto realized it was a weird way of saying training, body conditioning, and other similar practices. He unlocked new speed and boosted his potential for speed, but now he had to work his ass off to keep it on the same level and actually build on top of it. Since then, he performed 2 more of such rituals and received the blessing of the stag a year later, which straightened his posture, fixed his malnourishment, fixed his height, and gave him a confident gait. Naturally, as a result he had to watch his diet, eat properly to sustain the same level of nutrition, and do stretching exercises so that his posture didn't deteriorate back. And he also received the blessing of the bear another year after that, the result of which was slightly thicker skin, some muscle mass, and strength. And to keep that in line he had to do intense workouts. He was thankful he only needed 2 hours of sleep. When he unlocked the next level, the adept section of the book, he was floored by how much content there was compared to the beginner stage. Not so much in practical sense, but in theoretical. He learned that the reason for the difference of content was because in the old world, not many could overcome the hurdle of the teachings, or had enough willpower to not get lost in the lust for power or enough will to survive the ritual's hole. Many fanatics would become simple possessed that would fill Bethrazin's army of yore as cannon fodder. To become truly the master of the path of the damned one needed the willpower, intelligence, cunning, and determination to go through different ranks, and the willingness to do it all in Bethrazin's name out of your own free will, for it was said that it was him who created men and gave them the greatest boon of all. Free will. Nevertheless, the difficulty of the adept section spiked. Much more in-depth knowledge, more explanations, theories, all kinds of ritual bases, combat and otherwise, different practices and their explanations. There were 2 hurdles for Naruto in this. First, the book seemed to add a lot of focus on how chakra interacted with the infernal arts, on how it twisted the whole practice compared to what it was in the old world. As Naruto learned, there was no chakra back then, and all of this was done through different medium. Naruto struggled to understand this at first, which, of course, forced Naruto to visit the library and pick up several books on ninja theory, cleared by the Hokage. Eventually it became easier to understand. The second hurdle came in the form of applying what he learned practically. There was a lot of theoretical stuff and not nearly as much practical application of it in terms of techniques or jutsus he could perform. It wasn't a list of here is a technique X, perform these hand seals, and voila no. The whole point was that every practitioner of the path of the damned was unique in their arts. It supplied him the knowledge and showed some examples. There was 2 techniques that were combat ready to learn and one off combat and offered some bases. But it was up to him to develop his own applications of it. The book called him a protector, so Naruto mused that maybe there used to be other types of practitioners too. In the end he managed to create something of his own which was a testament of his dedication to the art. And he was certain that he knew enough to somewhat improvise on the spot too, if the situation called for it. As of right now he has finished the whole adept section of the book and reread it twice. There was no further instruction on how to proceed, and he knew there was more to be learned. For a while that made Naruto very irritated, but at least it gave him time to perfect what he knew and to focus on other things. He didn't ignore his ninja training either. He perfected the academy Taijutsu and was constantly working on his chakra control, which was exceedingly difficult for him. That's when he found out that the reason it was difficult and the reason he couldn't perform Bunshin correctly was because he had just so much dense chakra. Which forced him to go hard on chakra control exercises. He has mastered tree walking and is confident in water walking, but he had to do those daily. He wished he could do a ritual and receive a blessing to jump and correct his control, but he was at a loss at which animal he could use that represented chakra and control in one. Naruto remembered that at one point he felt extremely overwhelmed. Physical workouts, proper nutrition and meals, so naturally cooking, chakra control exercises, academy, infernal art studying and practicing at night, taijutsu practice, agility and speed training, academics, shuriken and kunai training. There was just so much and so little time to do it all in a single day to a good standard. At one point he almost had a breakdown, but he visited the sensei just in time for the man to give him advice on how to deal with it. And it was simple. My boy, you don't have to do everything in one day. You can easily split your workload in half and alternate the days on which you do them. For all his new intelligence, Naruto berated for not seeing something so obvious. Still, he was glad for Hiruzen's continued support despite his dark hearts. Sadly, not that Naruto cared much anyway, despite all the training he was still the dead last in the academy, only doing enough to pass. He gave up quite early when he saw that the sabotage won't stop, so he didn't bother doing anything about it. All that mattered was for him to graduate and become a ninja, not the grades. He refused to bring it up to the old man, simply because he was so thankful for all of his help. He knew the Sandaime was giving him more attention than he should have, indulging in his unannounced strolls around the village and taking him away from his duties. There was lots of paperwork that Sandaime always complained about, and Naruto just couldn't bring it up in himself to add another burden on the old man to start a massive-scale investigation in the academy, and he also didn't want to inconvenience those who treated him neutrally. Besides, Naruto was sure that Sandaime was following his progress anyway, and if he hadn't said anything, then neither would Naruto. Over the course of the years he got a bit closer with his classmates, at least with the ones from clans. He wouldn't go out of his way to say he was friends with them, but he wouldn't say they were nobodies, either they are going to be his future comrades, so he made some effort in getting to know them while in the academy. He never spent any time with them outside the academy though, as he simply didn't have the time for it. It's not like he was receiving invitations either. The civilian kids, however, they just chose to mostly ignore Naruto. Ever since he fixed his height, got bigger in stature, and obtained that imposing feeling, they felt picking on Naruto wouldn't be the smartest thing. The sun now sat comfortably in the sky above the horizon, blessing the village with its warmth and light. Naruto was startled to realize an hour or two have passed since he first arrived on the Hokage monument. Soon he will have to leave for the academy for his final exam and graduation. The most recent dilemma on his mind, however, was something that the Hokage revealed to him a week ago. The Kyuubi. Hiruzen wanted to show Naruto the same trust that Naruto gave him, so he decided to finally reveal about the Bijuu sealed within the boy. To say that Naruto was furious was an understatement. He was livid. Beyond angry. So much so that outwardly he remained completely calm. Even his face expression didn't change. But inside there was so much turmoil. He lost all of his control over his chakra and subconsciously allowed it to leak. The Anbu in the shadows had a bead of sweat rolling down their brow from the sheer eerie feeling that the chakra was giving off. That feeling when you think you can feel someone stand behind your back and softly breathe on your ear. They were instructed by the Hokage to not do anything if this happens. At the time all Naruto did was calmly get up and leave the office and go into the woods to train. It took him a couple of days, but he significantly calmed down and approached Hokage again and expressed his understanding of the situation. Thank goodness for Naruto's newfound cool-headedness. Naruto expressed to Hiruzen that he understood the need to protect him. He was a loudmouth and a troublemaker, and while the knowledge would make him understand the treatment he received and make him feel better, he wasn't sure if in his childish, impulsive mind, he'd be able to keep his mouth shut and not use the knowledge as a means to get back to the nastier villagers. He could imagine this some civilian being rough with him on the streets and then him shouting about setting Kyuubi on him. That would have certainly worsened how the rest of the villagers viewed him too. When Naruto asked why Hiruzen revealed it to the village in the first place, he said it was the Yondame's dying wish for him to be seen as a hero. In hindsight, Hiruzen knew now that was a mistake to do. Naruto saw how much Hiruzen regretted the choices he made. And now it made perfect sense why the old man would sometimes look so sad when looking at him. Naruto also knew that the Hokage cared for him as a family and that he supported him in the path he has chosen. Maybe it was Hiruzen's way of atoning. So for that, he was able to forgive. Forgive, but not forget. He loved the Hokage, he was the closest thing to a family. While he still felt the sting of broken trust, he also knew he would eventually be able to work through that. He wasn't sure how he felt about Yondaime himself. On one hand he always admired the man and wanted to be like him, but on the other he sealed the Kyuubi into him, thus ruining the chance at a perfectly normal life. Naruto frowned when he looked up and saw that the sun was in a certain position in the sky. It was time to get a move on. He dusted off his black shinobi pants and adjusted the bandage tape on each end of the pants, adjusted his long-sleeved black shirt that had red spiral on the back and fastened the tape at the sleeves. Checked his utility belt that contained pouches with shurikens, kunai, a scroll, and a knife. Looking over the village for the last time, Naruto moved his hand through his long golden locks to get some hair away from his face. He never bothered to cut it. Time to become a ninja. And with that he leapt off the Hokage monument. Admiring the feeling of being suspended in the air for a moment, gravity soon took hold of him as he fell down. He adjusted his body and smoothly landed on the bridge of Yondaime's nose. Without losing momentum, he began sliding down his massive rock nose while at the same time getting the scroll from his pouch. When he reached the tip of the nose, he unrolled the scroll and leapt into the air. Showing impressive feat of agility, he twisted his body so that he was now facing the Yondaime. With a brief application of chakra into the scroll, he unsealed a couple of buckets all containing paint of white, red, blue and other colors. He used both of his hands, as well as kicks with his feet to throw the buckets and splashed the paint on the Yondaime. As he started to descend he got out some kunai and quickly threw them at each bucket to pin them to a wall so they wouldn't land on anyone's heads. Then, he formed a ram seal, and after a brief concentration, the messy paint, which was laced with Naruto's chakra, on Yondaime's face turned and twisted and moved until at the very end, the revered man's face looked like that of a clown. And that pretty much summed up what Naruto thought of the man at the moment. Satisfied with his handiwork, Naruto used the wall, trees, and the light poles underneath to safely land. Putting hands in his pockets, Naruto calmly walked towards the academy with a smirk on his face. He might have grown out of his childish tendencies and significantly matured, but he was still a prankster at heart. Naruto reached the academy just in time to claim his usual seat at the back of the classroom, just behind Sasuke who currently moodily looked out of the window. It was sad what happened to Sasuke's clan. He understood how it is to be lonely, but he never actually lost anyone close to him, so he didn't know how to approach Sasuke to show his support. The most he's done was give a nod to Sasuke, who seems to have understood the message. Last-minute latecomers were hurriedly walking in, Naruto politely greeting those he talked with and ignoring others, before everyone was present and the final exam started. The first exam was written test, basic questions on everything they've learnt in all the time in the academy. History, basic chakra theory, prominent figures of the village, missions rankings, and such. Naruto answered all the questions easily enough but didn't put much effort into going into details for extra credit. He knew that the final score would be based on the average of all the tests and exams, and since he was already dead last, there was no reason to even try to outdo himself here, and he was sure someone would make it, so he got lowest score anyway. Then came Taijutsu, which involved a brief spar with their instructor. His basic Taijutsu was strong, so he did well against Iruka-sensei. Next came Shuriken and Kunai accuracy test. Here he decided to show off a bit and hit all 10 targets with both weapons, surprising everyone. Finally, came the ninjutsu test, where you had to show that you could perform the basic 3 techniques Kawarimi, Henge, and basic Bunshin. Everyone was called forward, some people failed one technique or the other. Regardless how well you performed in the other parts of the exam, if you failed any of the 3 techniques, then it would be an automatic fail, and you would have to stay for another year. Those people who failed were a bit disheartened, but then Naruto thought it's for the best if they didn't take their studies seriously enough to practice the techniques, then maybe they needed more time before becoming ninjas. Finally, Naruto was called forward. He performed the perfect henge and substituted himself with a nearby chair. Very good. Now show us the Bunshin, Iruka said. Naruto nodded. He formed a ram seal, and then around 20 clones formed and filled out the room. Iruka could only sweat drop. Well, Iruka was interrupted by Mizuki. Naruto, you have to only create 2 Bunshins to pass. This is too much. Naruto frowned. Actually, Mizuki-sensei, the exam objectives only state I have to successfully perform the jutsu. It doesn't say anything about the number of Bunshins. He then looked at Iruka. I have too much chakra capacity in me. Here he looked at Iruka with a pointed stare, and it would require an immense chakra control for me to conjure any less. As they are now, my Bunshins are perfect, but if you will insist, then I am willing to show something else for extra credit. Advanced chakra control exercise such as tree walking, perhaps. Or another jutsu. Iruka shook his head and shot Mizuki a glance. That won't be necessary. You are right, you only need to show that you can do the jutsu. Congratulations, Naruto. You are now a genin of Konohagakure. Please take your headband and return to your seat. Naruto nodded his head, completely ignoring the sour look on Mizuki's face. He accepted the headband and smiled as he tied it around his forehead, which pushed his long locks out of his face. Finally a real ninja. He reclaimed his seat and patiently waited for everyone else to finish their exam. When the final student final passed, Iruka stood and addressed the classroom. Congratulations, everyone. You are all now officially genin, protectors of Konoha. Remember, anything and everything you do is for the people. Always remember about the will of fire. Now you will have a week off while we compile all of the results and assign you to teams. During this week you are free to relax, but I suggest to keep training. You never know what can happen out there. Additionally, all who passed are required to have their ninja ID registered and picture taken. You can do it either here or at the Hokage's tower on the administrative floor. He took a breath and smiled. Be here a week from now on at 10 AM sharp to learn your team assignments and meet your jonin instructors. You are all dismissed. Everyone excitedly trickled out of the building, eager to tell their family that they are now ninja. Naruto decided that he will visit the Hokage tower now to have his ninja ID over and done with. Before he could walk away, he was stopped by Mizuki just outside. Hey Naruto, he called. Yes, Mizuki-sensei. Listen, would you like to earn an extra credit? You are currently at the very bottom on the rankings, Mizuki offered with a seemingly kind smile. Naruto frowned. Why would I want that? Your scores at the end of the academy influence your team placements. Surely you wouldn't want to be placed on the same team that has other low-scoring kids. You wouldn't want to be held back, would you? It would only take a small extra test. Naruto couldn't help but hum. He didn't know that the academy scores directly correlated with what teams you're placed on. If he thought about it, then it made sense the teams had to be balanced. Though remembering Mizuki's sour face when Iruka passed him, Naruto wasn't certain if he believed the validity of Mizuki's claim. I appreciate the offer, Mizuki-sensei, but no thanks. I am sure Hokage-sama would put me on the right team. I'm also certain I would do reasonable well on any team. After all, a ninja has to show adaptability. See you later, Mizuki-sensei. And with that, Naruto turned around and left, never seeing Mizuki's scowling face. In no time, Naruto entered Hokage's tower and quickly reached the administrative floor. After confirming his details with the secretary on the ground floor, he learned to get along with her, but she still was watching like a hawk in case he tried to bolt for Hokage's office like he usually did. He entered the designated room and was surprised to see the Sandaime sit there along with 2 more people. Hey old man. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be doing paperwork? Naruto-kun. Hokage greeted when he saw the teen walk in. Alas, for the next week I am stuck here for some time. It's a tradition to welcome and congratulate new genins. Alas, they often choose to do it at the academy building, so I'm using this opportunity to take a break at the pretense of working, he winked, and the other 3 people in the room sweat dropped now, congratulations on passing. Let's get a move on, shall we? Naruto nodded and he was led to sit on a chair in the middle of the room to have his picture taken by one of the assistants. Next he filled out a form and in a matter of minutes he had his ID done. Thank you. Now sadly I can't offer for you to stay and chat, today is quite a busy day despite what I said earlier. Hiruzen looked apologetically to Naruto. Before I go, there's something I wanted to ask though. Hokage nodded for him to continue. Is it true that genin teams are assigned based on academy scores? Hokage blinked at the question, not quite expecting it. Usually yes, to balance out the teams. But sometimes some jonins would take a student as an apprentice, which is rare, or request specific genins to be put on their team. It's also up to the Hokage's discretion, he answered truthfully. Who told you that? Well, it's not a secret, there's also a reason this information is not widespread. I see. It was Mizuki-sensei. After the exam he offered me extra credit for doing some hidden test to get a higher score. No matter, I refused him. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes at this. Before Naruto could leave, however, a boy with an incredibly long scarf ran in holding a wooden shuriken. This is it, Gramps. I will defeat you now and claim your hat. Then he tripped over his own scarf and hit the floor with his face. Hiruzen tried to hide his embarrassment by pulling his Hokage hat down. The boy got up with some tears in his eyes and then accusingly pointed at Naruto. It was you. You tripped me. Naruto looked at the boy with deadpan expression, sure. Then he looked at the Hokage. See you later, Jiji. And left. As he was leaving he almost ran into another ninja with headband and round shades. The man seemed to be in quite a rush. After Naruto quickly muttered an apology, he finally left the tower to go spend some time outside the walls of the village to train. It was late evening with the sun having set behind the horizon an hour ago, casting the forest into darkness. The only sources of light were the lights from the village that managed to pierce the canopy. But this was perfect for Naruto and the kind of training he was doing tonight. He was dashing and darting around the village while remaining in the forest, leaping and jumping from tree to tree, vertically and horizontally, trying to speed up with every lap he made. Impressive feats of agility was on display as Naruto cartwheeled from one tree into another, before pushing with hands and leaping to a third tree, running up to the top before jumping down onto another tree, dashing and weaving forward, while practicing taijutsu katas on the move. This trained his speed, reflexes, chakra control, stamina, getting himself used to fighting on the move. The cover of darkness had the benefit of training his perception and attention. Naruto was utilizing several skills in his arsenal to train them all together as a way to finish off the day. As he was making his third lap his ears picked up a snap of twigs and he saw a shadow dart through the trees. His sixth sense told him this was slightly suspicious, so he followed it while trying to be discreet. There was someone who seemed to be in quite a hurry, as if running away. Then suddenly the shadow picked up the speed and Naruto gave chase, not letting up. This continued for a couple more seconds before the shadow suddenly stopped and shouted, "Come out. I know you're following me." Naruto cursed that he failed being stealthy. He was also startled to realize that he knew the voice. Mizuki-sensei? Mizuki couldn't believe his luck. He sensed that someone was following him for quite a while and for a moment he thought he was discovered by Anbu. Mizuki immediately relaxed, completely disregarding that Naruto actually managed to keep up with him. The man cackled, "If it isn't the Kyuubi brat." Now Naruto frowned. There was definitely something wrong here. Mizuki appeared to carry some kind of a massive scroll and was hastily running in the opposite direction of the village. Naruto had a bad feeling about this as he narrowed his eyes. "You do know that you just broke one of the Sandame's laws." Who cares about that? None of it will matter when I kill you and bring this scroll of seals to my new master. A traitor then. In Naruto's opinion those were one of the worst kind of people. He always felt there was something unsettling about his now former teacher, but he always chalked it down to the generic Kyuubi dislike. Also Naruto thought it was stupid of the man to just reveal his plans, see if he can fish for some information, then and who is your master? Orochimaru, of course. Mizuki laughed and then leered at Naruto. Do you want to know why the villagers seem to hate you? Why your parents are dead? Naruto raised his eyebrow. Was the man serious? Go on then, why? Because you are the accursed Kyuubi no Yoko. The Yondaime couldn't kill off the demon, so instead he sealed it into a newborn babe. And that babe was you. You are the Kyuubi reincarnated, you bear all the responsibility of all those deaths over a decade ago. I will kill you and do Konoha a favor. I see. Well, I already knew about the Kyuubi. And now you officially broke an S-rank secret and the penalty of that is death. Mizuki was a bit taken back. He didn't expect that kind of reaction. Also it's a bit weird you would claim to do Konoha a favor if you're turning traitor. Don't mind me, I'm just thinking out loud. I know it's a matter of speech. Now Naruto got serious and took a kunai out. He had to be careful, the enemy was a chunin. Sure, Naruto trained his ass off every single day for the past few years and he even considered himself to be above his fellow classmates, but this was still his very first real battle to the death against a ninja. His inexperience could prove fatal. Mizuki adopted an angry face expression when he saw Naruto wasn't reacting like he expected him to. He took the scroll off and threw it on the ground next to him before suddenly dashing towards Naruto as quickly as he could, intent to finish this quickly. No doubt Anbu were already looking for him, he wasn't exactly subtle when he stole the scroll. Naruto anticipated such a move and rolled to the side to dodge an incoming punch. At the end of the roll he threw the kunai, aiming it at the head. He knew Mizuki would dodge that, so he was already weaving some hand seals, anticipating where he would land based on his momentum. As predicted, Mizuki saw the incoming kunai and rolled forward. Pain. Fireball, only to watch with wide eyes as a medium-sized ball of fire was already upon him. While it was smaller in size compared to Gakakyu, the heat was no less intense. He was forced to flip backwards from a weird angle to avoid it. Unfortunately, he didn't escape completely unscathed, his leg was caught slightly in the ensuing explosion. He didn't have the time to even react to Naruto's sudden skill, as he was already above him with kunai aimed to pierce his head. Naruto himself was quite surprised at how easy it seemed. He chalked it down to being cooped up as a teacher in a classroom on a daily basis and not bothering to train because of that. Mizuki rolled out of the way just in time, made another flip and jumped into the air. He quickly took a scroll out of his pouch and unsealed his special commission Fuuma Shuriken before in one fluid movement threw it at Naruto. Immediately after, he threw a bunch of shurikens as he landed on the floor. The blonde cartwheeled sideways to dodge the Fuuma and at the end of the movement, he planted his feet on a tree and run up to evade the shuriken. He pushed off the tree and threw his own shuriken towards Mizuki. However, for some goddamn reason, he didn't anticipate that Mizuki wouldn't wait for him to dodge and would press on his attack. Later Naruto would berate himself for this mistake. Mizuki did the same thing he did earlier, and if he didn't wait for Mizuki to dodge, then why would it not be the same case if situation was reversed? Naruto couldn't do anything when Mizuki was already upon him with a heel attack from above. Naruto couldn't dodge while being midair, so the best thing he could do is raise a hasty block. Mizuki's heel hit the mark and Naruto plummeted towards the ground. Having had experienced falling from great heights, Naruto managed to adjust his position and fall into a roll to avoid Mizuki's follow-up attack. Naruto quickly spun around and tried to deliver a high kick, which was blocked, and then a low sweep, which was evaded. They traded a couple of taijutsu hits, neither penetrating each other's blocks. Naruto threw a haymaker, but this time instead of blocking, Mizuki grabbed the arm and pushed Naruto while jumping back. Naruto stumbled backwards, and his danger senses were triggering all kinds of alerts. Naruto forced himself to fall backwards. Instead of recovering from the stumble, he leaned into the fall and bent his back backward, and his eyes widened as at that moment the Fuuma Shuriken from earlier soared just inches away from his face. If he didn't listen to his danger senses, then he'd have sustained a massive wound. He might not feel pain much anymore, but he was still immortal, so he bled and could die. He continued to bend backwards until his hands touched the ground and he managed to flip and recover his position. Mizuki was standing a bit away holding the Fuuma Shuriken and sporting a nasty smirk. "This is a custom-made Fuuma Shuriken that I commissioned from Tetsu no Kuni, it cost me a fortune. It works like a boomerang. For a dead last you are putting up quite a fight, but I am a chunin, I am leagues above you. Prepare to die." Dramatic much? Naruto thought. While Mizuki was revealing his technique, Naruto took this moment of respite to catch his breath and recenter himself. He took out two kunai and prepared for an attack he knew will come. True to his prediction, Mizuki threw the Fuuma again. This time instead of dodging straight away, Naruto channeled some chakra into his arms and flung his two kunai with as much force as he could muster towards the incoming projectile. The power at which he threw his two kunai overpowered the superior weight and force of the incoming Fuuma and with a loud clang, managed to divert its trajectory so that Naruto wouldn't have to worry about dodging. Mizuki was already upon him and aimed a hit at his chest. Naruto chose not to block, but semi-parried, diverting the hit enough that it hit area of his body that would do the least damage. Due to his pain tolerance, this allowed him to not lose his center of gravity and step into Mizuki's space, delivering a swift kick to his right shin. Mizuki felt sharp pain coming up his leg as that was the same leg that got burned and damaged in the explosion. He buckled, dropping his guard, and Naruto didn't hesitate to deliver a swift punch to the face, followed up by a strong kick to his chest. Mizuki flew backwards, blood dripping from his lip, but he managed to flip and land on his feet. He still winced as now the pain in his leg was more prevalent. He knew he needed to finish this soon, as the leg could no longer be ignored, and he still had to think about getting away. The brat was giving him more trouble than he expected. Naruto didn't wait for him to launch a counter-attack. He took a knife out from his pouch and started loudly chanting a short incantation. Mizuki stopped in his tracks when he heard the strange noises coming from Naruto. They made him feel wary because it sounded powerful and forceful, but he laughed nonetheless. "You're so scared that you started bumbling in your delusion." Ignoring his instincts, Mizuki grabbed a kunai and shot forward. Naruto spun around to evade the first attack, then tried to stab Mizuki with his knife. Mizuki parried it with his kunai and attempted a low sweep with his legs, but Naruto jumped over him, planted legs on Mizuki's back and pushed. Mizuki was forced to do a forward roll, while Naruto jumped back to make distance. All the while chanting. And then he stopped the incantation and stabbed his own palm without even flinching before discarding the knife. Mizuki was so shocked by the sudden self-harm that he was rooted on the spot. I always knew the demon kid was crazed, despite his cool persona mask. Naruto made a single one-handed hand seal and then put his fist above his bloody palm, almost as if he was grabbing a hilt of a weapon. Instantly, the blood that was on the ground and still dripping from his wound reversed its direction and flew towards Naruto's fist. He threw his arm backwards and immediately all the blood coalesced to make one long whip. Infernal whip. Naruto bellowed his technique and immediately the bloody whip was engulfed in intense deep red fire that Naruto held in his hand. This was one of the 2 combat techniques that he learned directly from the book. Naruto dared to smirk confidently at Mizuki. Without hesitating he flicked the whip forward and Mizuki had to roll to avoid being hit. He noticed with horror that where the whip stuck on the ground was a hole, everything around it having pure black scorch mark. It packs a punch physically and also burns. He had no time to think as he had to duck to avoid the whip that was flying at him from the side. It passed over the head and Mizuki widened his eyes at the intense heat he felt over his head, singing some of his hair. Mizuki quickly recovered and stood up and winced again as pain shot through the injured leg. The whip retreated back and Naruto held his palm upwards. Immediately the fiery whip straightened and Naruto held it like a javelin. This happened in a span of a second while Mizuki was recovering. He jumped and threw it, aiming to hit his former sensei. Mizuki widened his eyes at the incoming danger and due to his injury, only managed to sidestep it, barely escaping it. However, this is where he made his mistake. He should have realized that Naruto jumped up for a reason. He should have jumped away too, made some distance, rather than just sidestep. The bloody, fire-covered javelin embedded itself in the ground next to him and released all of its fire within it. The point of impact exploded in a fiery blast, and Mizuki was thrown back as he took the full brunt of the explosion. The most he could do was cover his face by crossing hands. He flew and hit a tree before falling to the ground, face first. Naruto dashed and grabbed his bloody javelin that lost its fire now. If he wanted to reignite it, then he would need to have some of his enemy's blood. Or he would need to create a new infernal whip, which meant another long chant and another stab to his palm to get blood as sacrifice. He knew the technique disperses soon after losing its flames, but then he looked at Mizuki and saw that there is no need to reignite or renew it. He approached Mizuki and pierced his upper thigh, eliciting a scream from the man. A second later the bloody weapon dissolved and disappeared into the air. At the same time the Hokage landed nearby with a small squad of 3 Anbu behind him. Naruto-kun. But Naruto didn't hear him. He kept staring at the laying Mizuki, at his blood forming a puddle under his punctured leg. Naruto's eyes dilated, unblinking, his whole body was frozen still, and an image kept playing in his mind on a repeat. Naruto broke down in cold sweat and suddenly he knew what he had to do. "Naruto." Hokage repeated again, this time more firmly. Naruto snapped out of his stupor and gulped. He then tore his eyes away from Mizuki and looked at the Hokage. "Hey Jiji. What happened here?" "In short, I was training, then I saw someone running away, so I chased after because it reminded me of Hinata incident. It turned out to be Mizuki who stole some kind of scroll and wanted to give it to Orochimaru, then he revealed the Kyuubi secret, then we battled, and here we are." The Anbu present were quite impressed that a fresh genin could take down a Chunin. Sure, they knew that there was something unusual going on with the blonde with the Anbu constantly being with the Hokage in the office, but they never knew or seen of what Naruto could do exactly. Hiruzen, for his part, nodded. He already partly knew what happened having watched Naruto since the beginning of the fight via his seeing ball. He was too busy mobilizing his ninja to look for scroll of sealing, so he wasn't sure what transpired before that and how it ended. The Hokage left his tower with Anbu the moment he saw Naruto stabbing his palm. Another Anbu landed holding the large scroll of seals. He wore a white cloak and his face was hidden by a dog mask. "Hokage-sama." Hiruzen nodded and took the scroll off him, then turned to Naruto. "Well done. You managed to beat and capture a Chunin traitor and protect an item that would severely endanger Konoha if it got in the wrong hands. You will be compensated for this. A relevant mission will be added to your record along with the pay. You can return home, we will take care things from here." Naruto uncertainly looked at the Sandaime, then at the heavily breathing Mizuki, and then back at the Hokage-sama. He then looked at Mizuki again. May I really need to. Hokage was quite shocked and widened his eyes when Naruto addressed him by such a respective title. Naruto was addressing him not as his Jiji this time, but as the leader of the village. He couldn't remember when that ever happened before. That only meant whatever he wanted was extremely serious. Looking at Naruto again, he finally noticed his rigid stance. The light sweaty then saw the way he was looking at Mizuki and Hiruzen immediately understood. Or at least he connected the dots and made an educated guess. His eyes hardened a bit as he addressed Naruto, albeit still maintaining a warm tone of voice. Naruto-kun, I can't allow you to do that. Mizuki committed several most serious crimes today. He also, as per your words, admitted to working for Orochimaru against the village. We need him alive at the T&I to get further information. It's a case of village security. Naruto looked at the Sandaime and swallowed hard, trying to get his body under control. I understand that, completely. But I need him. He stopped and quickly searched in his mind for an answer. He needed a compromise, and he thought he found one. Okay, but can I do something else? Nothing that will kill him. At this point Anbu got extremely curious as to what the kid was talking about. I think I can manage with a different kind of procedure, with just using a small body part hand perhaps. It won't kill him, and I really need to do this to proceed with my training. Hiruzen pursed his lips as he thought about it. Normally it's not something he'd allow, but this was a unique situation. He didn't fail to note that Naruto said procedure and not ritual, no doubt concerned about the presence Anbu. In fact, that observation helped him make a decision very well. As long as he lives. Anbu and I will remain until you are done, then we will take him away. In the end this would serve the village better and kill two birds with one kunai, possibly advance the teen's training, as well as slowly expose his techniques to other ninja, as a way to get them used to it. Naruto blinked but nodded his head in thanks. He didn't question the decision to have Anbu watch, as he guessed it's to start letting ninjas in on his activities. It's something he didn't know how to approach. He wasn't planning on keeping his techniques and lifestyle a secret from his comrades, but he didn't want to go and shock anyone with randomly performing bloody rituals. He wasn't even sure how he'd even start that conversation with his team. Oh hey, just to let you know, I sometimes stab myself and do weird shit with blood and ominously say some nonsense, so don't mind me, it's all good, yeah. He could imagine how well that would go. Not wanting to waste any time, he quickly got to work. Thankfully this won't be anything as elaborate as his previous sacrificing rituals to get blessings. After all, this was not meant to grant any perceivable effects or even do anything at all that would give results. This was merely a sacrifice to Valnaern as a way to say thank you and give respect to his patron. Naruto picked up the discarded knife and with a quick minor Kaiten jutsu, he blew some fire onto the blade to heat it up. Hiruzen was definitely impressed by the control of Kaiten chakra. He didn't know the boy knew elemental jutsu. I will have to get a new knife after this, Naruto thought. This was a simple kitchen knife with a metal that was not meant to handle chakra. When it cools down it will definitely lose its sharp quality. He quickly and smoothly brought down the knife on Mizuki's hand with as much force as he could and was lucky enough to be able to chop it off in one try, while also cauterizing the wound to stop Mizuki from bleeding out. Everyone else present just blinked in incredulity. Ignoring the painful moan from the downed man, Naruto put the cut hand down. He then discarded his now useless knife and got a kunai out. Here he started chanting and stabbed his now healed palm again. Using the bloody kunai, Naruto drew a simple circle around the hand to symbolize that it was him who took the man down. In his chant he thanked Valnaern for his patronage, for granting him the tools to achieve the power he needed to protect his village from this traitor. When the circle connected there was a wave of power that expanded from the scene, washing over the Hokage and Anbu. Just like Naruto's voice, it was strong and powerful and eerie and made them feel unsettled, but not threatened. It washed over them and covered them in a certain feeling that they could only explain as a protective blanket. The Hokage has seen this before, of course, but it was no less fascinating as it was the first time. This power, well seemingly based on chakra, didn't feel like any other chakra exposure they've felt before. It wasn't like killing intent or dense chakra pressure that physically affected them. Naruto continued. He dipped the kunai in the pool of blood that collected under Mizuki's leg and then drew an incomplete half circle, enough so that he, Mizuki and the hand was inside it without closing the circle. In the same ancient tongue he begged for apology that it won't be a full offering because he was a protector and he needed the man alive to protect his village. He then drew a straight line and connected the circle that the hand was in with the pool of blood under the leg. He again thanked Valnaern for allowing protection of the village through his path of the damned. Naruto uttered the final syllable, all the blood flashed crimson red and then burst into flames. Mizuki suddenly convulsed and screamed as if in intense pain. It only lasted for 2 seconds before, in a crescendo of power that even the observers felt, all the blood scattered and vanished including the hand, and Mizuki stopped screaming and passed out. Even the pool of blood vanished. Naruto himself had a full second where he felt a sudden sense of pure smugness, understanding, acceptance, self-satisfaction. But then it was gone just as quickly, replaced by what he felt when Hokage first arrived tired. "I thought you said it won't harm him." Hiruzen finally spoke. He sensed his Anbu were still trying to get over the shock of what they just witnessed, and he had to refrain from smirking in amusement. Naruto shrugged. "It wasn't supposed to. I can only speculate that because it was a half offering, it was a way for Valnaern to let him know that he was lucky. Either way, he's alive and well, and I am done here. Thank you very much for allowing me this much, Gigi." "Payton?" he asked. "When you gave me clearance to get materials on chakra off the library, I might or not might have utilized that opportunity to look up some jutsus too. Would be bad to get stuck on infernal arts only." Hiruzen chuckled. "I see, very smart. I'm proud of you, Naruto-kun." The team beamed. "Return back to the village now. And don't forget your team placements in a week." Naruto smiled and bid them all a goodbye. After a signal from the Hokage, the Anbu immediately grabbed the knocked out Mizuki and disappeared. They would probably treat his leg first so the man doesn't die from further blood loss before they can get information out of him. "That was dog masked." Anbu began. "Peculiar. What was it, Hokage-sama?" "Infernal arts." Hokage turned to his Anbu captain and regarded him for a second before replying. Naruto somehow got the attention of some ancient forgotten god. And when he had the choice, and I am sure the boy had the choice, for nothing of sorts can be forced, of embracing it or walking away, well, our genin decided it would be more beneficial to walk that path. Do you think it will become a problem? Do you?" Hokage shot back. Startled, Anbu didn't expect a question back. But then he understood Hokage was asking for his opinion of what he just witnessed. "I didn't feel threatened. And whatever Naruto got involved with without a doubt was of benefit to him. He did, after all, defeat a Chunin, even if it was someone as unimpressive as Mizuki. However, it does seem rather dark. It was supposed to be a full sacrifice, wasn't it?" Hokage nodded. "That's what I understood too. That is concerning to me. We don't shun power based on how it was acquired if it's for the sake of the village. Tenzo is the proof of this. However, what if his dark god, whoever it might be, will start demanding more sacrifices and Naruto won't have any choice but to turn to the villagers? I don't think he would hesitate based on their treatment of him." Hokage waved his concerns away. "Naruto would never do that. I made sure of that. And he swore he would never, and I am inclined to believe him." Anbu wouldn't argue with the Hokage and tell him that promises shinobi made were a fickle thing. All he said instead was, "Time will tell." Naruto arrived home and the first thing he wanted to check was the disciple's manual. As he suspected a whole new content was available to him that would advance him on to the next level. However, the book said that only partial content has been revealed to you. Half an offering will only yield half the content. Well done on figuring out requirements on what you have to do. However, only a full ritualistic offering will give you the understanding to comprehend and unlock further teachings. Naruto was exhilarated. It's been months, almost a year, since he read the last available chapter to him, and now he could finally continue. It didn't matter it wasn't fully revealed, at least he now knew what he had to do. He was too tired to read tonight though, so instead he opted to go to bed. He didn't want to do the stamina refreshment either. Proper sleep always felt better. Besides, he had a whole week ahead of him still. At night he dreamt of feasts and banquets, of celebration, of kingdoms and seas of fire. At the same time as Naruto was sleeping, Hokage was sitting in his office patiently waiting for someone. It has already been an hour and it was getting quite irritating. He had to deal with the Mizuki incident and it was already getting very late. He was getting tired. Hokage signaled for one of his hidden Anbu. "Go fetch him. If he doesn't comply, use force. Use whole Anbu squad if you have to." The Anbu sweat dropped but nevertheless disappeared to carry out the order. Several agonizing minutes later, during which Sandaime was doing paperwork and extorting every single iota of his willpower not to burn it all to ashes, Anbu finally arrived with man he called for. "Thank you." Anbu nodded and disappeared back into the shadows. "Kakashi. It is late, I want to go home, so I will ignore this tardiness for now and get straight to the point. But do not make me wait so late again." "Understood." Just for good measure he blasted the silver-haired man with an extra strong kai. Kakashi sweated as he smiled. Maybe he should come on time when called next time. Maybe not. He will think about that, mama. Will do. Hokage increased his kai. "Kakashi. I know exactly what you are thinking." Kakashi only raised his arms in defense as his sweat dropped. Hokage relented. "No matter. I will be brief. This is about your team you will be trialing next week." Meanwhile, in the deepest and hottest, the most forgotten and abandoned depths of the netherworld, of hell, a veiny eyelid snapped fully open. The cold frozen air around warmed up by a fraction of a degree. When Naruto woke up it was still the night time, but he was already used to it. After freshening up, he went to pick up the book and a surprise awaited him there. The dagger lay on top of the manual. Naruto picked it up and absent-mindedly noticed that, just like the book, it took a bit of his blood. But he also somehow knew it's a one-time thing only. He inspected the dagger. It was beautiful. Crimson handle, narrow diamond-shaped black crossguard from which a pure black blade extended. The blade itself and the handle had a wide intricate lines on it as a decoration. Naruto pricked his finger at the edge and noted that the blade was very sharp. It was slightly longer than his knife, but not so much that it would be an inconvenience to use in his ritualistic needs. On a hunch, he channeled some chakra into it and the blade glowed blue. So it was chakra conductive too. Naruto smiled and was very pleased. Just yesterday he thought he'd need to get a new knife after his old one was ruined. Seems Bethrazin rewarded him for a job well done. For it couldn't be anyone else gifting him such a dagger when he needed one than his dark god. Chapter 3, Team 7. It was an early morning and Naruto was sitting in his usual spot in the academy. He was one of the first to arrive, quite eager about today to do anything else. Being here in the academy for the last time as a student was enough to calm him down. Other than him there were other early raisers too. Shino was here and so was Shikamaru. Admittedly the Nara was napping. Naruto also noticed that Iruka was sending him inconspicuous glances, full of curiosity. His relationship with Iruka was a weird one. It was a mixture of cold indifference like many others, but also had lots of moments of friendly warmth. From all the instructors and teachers at the academy, he was the closest to Iruka. Very few ninjas actually hated or ostracized him. After all, most shinobi knew the basic theory of sealing scrolls usage was a common thing. Did they fear the fox? Yes, definitely. Did they knew that the beast was behind the seal, and did they respect Yandame's unparalleled fuinjutsu skills that everyone knew about? Yes. The majority of the ninja population. Naruto was but another face in their army. With a mighty beast inside of him. Nevertheless, cases like Mizuki were very rare. Naruto would even be willing to bet his money that it was mostly Mizuki who led a sabotaging mission against him. He focused back on the manual he was reading and tuned out everything else. He only just started grasping the complexity of this new level, and the things he could learn to do were just exciting. Slowly, the rest of the graduates filled in. The silent excitement in the air was palpable. Suddenly the doors to the classroom banged open and two girls barged in, snapping Naruto out of his focus. Get out of the way, Ino pig. Watch it, billboard brow. I was first. No, you weren't. I was here first so I get to sit with Sasuke-kun. Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno. Resident fangirls that somehow managed to graduate. Naruto glanced at Sasuke who seemed to be completely lost in thought staring out of the window. But Naruto was observant enough to notice the raven-headed Uchiha slightly stiffen and let out barely audible sigh. His lips twitching in amusement and Naruto took pity on the other boy and stood up to take a seat next to him while both girls were too busy arguing. Sasuke didn't seem to acknowledge that, but Naruto felt him momentarily relax. The two girls finally reached their tables and Ino shouted Naruto. Move. He looked at Ino and raised an eyebrow. Why? It was Sakura who replied this time, a bit more timidly but no less fierce, because I'm supposed to sit with Sasuke-kun today. No, you're not, forehead. I stepped into the classroom first. Girls, Naruto deadpanned, if we go by that logic, then it's me who gets to sit with Sasuke. Undeniably I was here before any of you. Now scram, you don't want your precious Uchiha get gray hair from all the stress you're causing him. B. Settle down. Iruka shouted Ino, Sakura. Please sit so we can proceed. The girls had no choice but to comply and they sat at the table directly behind Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto's lips twitched in amusement. He could feel them glaring daggers at his back. Okay, good, Iruka began. Now let me begin by telling you how proud I am of. Naruto conveniently tuned out Iruka's speech, only paying quarter attention to it. His reading material was infinitely more interesting, but he didn't want to miss possible team assignments. And Team 7 will consist of Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki. Here Naruto's attention snapped back to Iruka full force. He also absent-mindedly took notice that Sasuke relaxed a bit and Sakura Haruno. Your Jonin sensei will be Kakashi Haddock. Immediately there was a collective groan and an incredibly loud squeak of excitement. Iruka once again expressed that it's their time to make the village proud before leaving the classroom. After that, different Jonin senseis came in and team by team the classroom got emptier and emptier until at last, some 20 minutes later, it was only the new Team 7 waiting. I suggest you get yourself comfortable. We will be waiting for at least 2 hours, Naruto said as he relaxed in his chair and did something he always wanted to, plop his feet on the table. With a satisfied smirk he nodded and turned to Sakura who was looking at him with a questioning glance. Yes. He raised an eyebrow. Well, she began uncertainly, how do you know that? Why would we wait for so long? Naruto looked at Sasuke. Even though the raven head hadn't even turned his head to look in their direction, Naruto saw that Sasuke was looking at them from the corner of his eyes. Kakashi Haddock. In the elemental nations famous as the copy nin Kakashi, rumored to have copied and mastered over 1000 jutsus. Copy? Sasuke thought curiously. In Konoha, however, he is mostly well known as a lazy, chronically late Kakashi. He would always arrive to all meetings, even with the Hokage, at least 2 or more hours late. Naruto finished. Sasuke scoffed, that can't possibly be true. Yeah. Sakura was quick to agree, why would they keep someone like that around if that was true? Naruto shrugged and got his book out again. I don't know, I am not the Hokage yet. I can only guess that his experience, prestige and fame overweights his habits. He is still extremely skilled too and highly respected across the elemental nations. And with that he left any further conversation by resuming reading. Sasuke curiously looked at Naruto before resuming staring out of the window. The next hour passed agonizingly slow. Naruto had to extort all the willpower he could muster to keep focus on reading and not lash out at Sakura. The girl was being unnecessarily loud and was pestering Sasuke almost non-stop, asking for dates and trying to fish for his opinions on her. At this point his eyebrow was twitching like it had a life of its own, so with a loud snap, Naruto closed his book. Right, he said loudly to draw both of their attentions. Sakura didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon, so he decided it would be better to take the control before he'd do something he'd regret. How about we do something productive while we wait? I suggest sharing some of our strengths and weaknesses, any skills or jutsus we might possess. You know, start being a team. Why would we do that? Sakura was a bit confused. We already seen everything we can do during the academy and the exam. Both Sasuke and Naruto blankly stared at her. Surely by that you're no implying you didn't train outside of the academy. No, I didn't. I mean, I practiced what we were taught, but I didn't train anything beyond that. I didn't think we had to. She was quick to defend herself. What were you doing then in your spare time if not training for the shinobi life? Naruto pressed. Sakura blushed in embarrassment even further and Naruto. That is none of your business. The blonde acquiesced. I suppose not. He then turned to the Uchiha. What about you? I'm sure someone like you didn't sit with his thumb up his arse and brood. You did plenty of that in the academy. Sasuke huffed. I trained 2 Kaiten jutsus, shuriken jutsu, and I can use wire in combat, proficient in Uchiha jutsu style, speed is decent. Naruto nodded. Good to know that Sasuke actually trained. He was pleased to know that he knew a taijutsu style outside the academy style that he always used in spars. What about you, Naruto? Sakura asked. If you're asking us then it means you know more than you showed at the academy too. Naruto nodded, glad that the girl was at least smart. Yes. I am proficient enough with Kaiten and know a couple of jutsus. Here Sasuke actually fully looked at him, quite intrigued. I have mastered the academy taijutsu. I make up for my lack of specialized taijutsu with my speed and strength, which I honestly think I have higher than most, if not all, of our graduating class. Sasuke really doubted that I also. Here he hesitated for a moment, something that Sasuke picked up on. I also specialize in a unique branch of jutsu that only I can use. It can be offensive, defensive, and supplementary, but I usually focus on the supplementary. Extensive. I trained my ass off. I had to for my dream. What is your dream, Naruto? Sakura asked. Even Sasuke looked curious. I will become the greatest Hokage ever and to make its people feel happy and protected, he replied in a matter-of-fact tone. Both wanted to scoff at that but couldn't bring themselves to do it openly. Every ninja wannabe claimed to be the next greatest Hokage. After that, the next hour passed quicker with them making brief conversation here and there. It was mostly Sakura pestering Sasuke and Sasuke just nodding here and there. When it was almost approaching 3 hours of wait time and even Sasuke was losing his patience, the doors to the classroom slid open and a silver-haired ninja in a standard Jonin garb casually walked in while reading an orange book. An orange book that Naruto has seen Hiruzen read from time to time. Yo, Kakashi greeted without even lifting his eyes. My first impression of you all is meh. He shrugged. Meet me on the rooftops in 5 minutes. And with that he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Told you, Naruto said and left the classroom with others quickly following suit. When they finally got on the terrace of the rooftop they saw Kakashi sitting on the railings. They quickly sat down on some steps and Kakashi addressed them. So let's introduce each other. Say your name, your likes and dislikes, your hobbies and dreams, etc. Maybe you should go first, sensei. So we know what to say, Sakura suggested. Kakashi looked at her. Sure. I'm Kakashi Haddock. I have some likes and some dislikes. My hobbies are none of your business. My dreams. Well, you next, Pinky. Everyone's sweat dropped. All they learned was his name, which they already knew. Right. My name is Sakura Haruno. I like Sasuke-kun and I dislike Ino Pig. My hobbies include makeup, helping mother around house. And my dream. Here she looked at Sasuke and giggled while blushing madly. Great. Was the collecting thought of everyone else present. Alright, you next, Broody. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I have no likes or dislikes, my hobby is to train, and my dream it's more of an ambition to kill a certain person. If it possible. The aura around Sasuke got gloomier. Okay, and you, Blondie? Here the young Uzumaki smirked and drawled, trying to imitate Kakashi. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, I have a lot of likes and very few dislikes, my hobby. As for my dream, Sasuke and Sakura both face faulted and Kakashi almost choked on air before regaining his composure and then chuckling. It's the first time someone actually shot his own words back at him. Funny, he commented. Now, meet me here tomorrow at 8 AM sharp for your Genin test. I advise you not to eat or you might get sick. Genin test? Sakura asked. I thought we already passed those with the exam. No. Those were just preliminary exams to see who had the potential to become Genin. The real Genin test is with their Jonin sensei. Only 33% of graduates pass, and with that he lazily waved his hand and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. I really need to learn Shunshin, Naruto decided. Well, the day was still young, and now that he was Genin, he was sure he had more material available to him at the library. The next morning, exactly at 8 AM, Naruto appeared in a swirl of leaves at Training Ground 7, shocking both Sakura and Sasuke, who were already there. How? Sasuke asked. Good morning to you too, Sasuke, Naruto said with an eye roll. How what? You can do what Kakashi did yesterday. It's called the Shunshin, Sakura supplied, requires Chunin level chakra control, but theoretically is easy to perform. I'm surprised you know that, Sakura. Good for you, Naruto complimented. I saw Kakashi sensei do it yesterday and I wanted to learn it too. So I did. Didn't even take half a day to get it right and then it's just practice. Teach me? Sasuke demanded. Naruto looked at the teen funnily. No. Because you're not being polite about it. Thought so, then Naruto burst out laughing. Look at me, I speak in Sasuke. Naruto. Sakura chided. Be nice. Naruto stopped laughing and looked at Sakura, and the girl won't lie, she was a bit creeped out. Naruto always gave off a weird cold vibe. She didn't listen to her parents' warnings much, seeing as Ino, her best friend, treated him decently like any other classmate. So she tried to imitate that, but there was just something off about him. Is that what her mom warned her about? But then he cracked a smile and said sure and went to sit under the shade of the tree to read. He had a pretty good feeling they will wait for a while. An hour passed and Kakashi was nowhere in sight. Even Sakura started getting irritated. She stopped pestering Sasuke in favor of silently fuming. A subtle growl was heard across the empty training ground and Naruto was amused to see Sasuke's ears reddening. Not even a minute later, like a chain reaction, Sakura's stomach growled in protest too. Naruto's lips twitched in amusement when he saw both of his other teammates look at him expectantly. After good 10 minutes of no reacting from Naruto, Sakura began looking between Naruto and Sasuke. Silently sighing, seeing that her love interest preferred not to comment, she steeled her nerves and asked Naruto. The teen in question looked up. Are you not hungry too? I'm not. I had breakfast before coming here. Sakura looked almost scandalous at that. Naruto. Kakashi-sensei forbid us from having breakfast. Naruto closed his book and pocketed it. No, Sakura, he didn't forbid us. He only advised that we don't. Besides, who skips breakfast when they know they have potential physically intense morning? He took a scroll out from his pouch and unsealed 2 bento boxes. Immediately he heard twin growls again. Come. I guessed you would have listened to him and I'm glad I wasn't wrong. I got these 2 for you. They didn't need much convincing and not even 20 minutes later they sat there satisfied. Thank you very much, Sakura smiled and Sasuke nodded in thanks too. Maybe Naruto wasn't that bad after all. Did you make these yourself? It was delicious. No. I can cook well enough for myself, but I wouldn't trust me with making something for others. Bought them on the way here. Oh. Well, thank you. After that they resumed to what they were doing before. Another hour and a half later Kakashi finally strolled into the training ground. Yo. You're late. Sakura screeched, but Kakashi just waved hand in dismissal. I was lost on the road of life and then had to help an old lady with her groceries. Needless to say no one believed that. Now, for your test. See these 2 bells. Kakashi took 2 bells out from his pouch and dangled them in front of the genin. Seeing them nod, he tied the bells to his waist. Your aim is to get these bells from me. If you get a bell then you pass. If you don't, then I will tie you to a training post for a whole day and later you will have to return to the academy. Any questions? Only people who get the bell will be on the team? Sasuke asked. That's right, Kakashi replied. He silently chuckled at everyone's incredulous face expressions. If no one has any further questions, then let's start. If you want any chance of succeeding then come at me with the intention to kill. You. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura interrupted. Is that not dangerous for you? Kakashi's sweat dropped. Surely the girl was joking. I am an experienced jonin and you are fresh off the academy. I will be fine. You have until noon today to complete this task. Begin. And with that all the 3 genin leaped away from the clearing, all in their own directions. At least they can hide, Kakashi thought. For an experienced jonin like him it was still no trouble finding them. He didn't chase them though, and instead took out his beloved orange book and started reading. For 10 minutes nothing happened. It seems they all waited for someone else to engage first to see what would happen. Kakashi sighed. If they won't come to him then he will have to come to them. Just as he was about to start moving, some shurikens flew at him from some treetops. Casually dodging them by leaning to the side he saw Sasuke rush him. What followed was a brief trade of taijutsu blows, with Sasuke finishing by performing a Gakakyu. Kakashi had to even put away his book for a second. Too bad for Sasuke was that due to his sense of victory, he lowered his guard and thus was dragged under the earth with headhunter jutsu. Afterwards Kakashi went and found Sakura. He didn't even need to lift a hand to deal with her, a simple genjutsu did the trick. Naruto saw both of these things and he knew Kakashi will give it some time before going to find him too. His stealth was bad anyway, so it wouldn't take long for Kakashi. However, Naruto thought that he actually figured out the true meaning of the test. Instead of allowing Kakashi to ambush him, Naruto jumped in front of the Jonin, taking a ready stance. "Ah, Naruto. I was just looking for you," Kakashi said. "I only have you to deal with and then the test will be over." "I don't quite think so," Naruto said carefully. I think I figured out this test." But that Naruto threw some shurikens in a wide angle while at the same time dashing towards Kakashi as fast as he could. Kakashi casually dodged the shuriken, but then his one visible eye widened at Naruto's speed fast. Naruto attacked him with a quick kick to his side that was holding the book and Kakashi was forced to let go of it to block. He did not expect high Chunin speed from a fresh academy graduate. When the kick was blocked, Naruto bent sideways and leaned while suspended mid-air and tried to grab the bells. Kakashi, seeing this, quickly pushed Naruto's leg that was still connected with his block and made a step backwards. Naruto's hand grasped nothing but thin air. Not perturbed and quite expecting this, Naruto didn't lost his momentum and dashed forward while quickly performing a sliding leg sweep. Kakashi jumped over him, but that's what Naruto wanted him to do. At the end of the slide, Naruto took out 2 smoke bombs and threw one at Kakashi while the other one under his feet, enveloping the area in a thick smoke. When it cleared, Naruto was gone. Interesting, was all that Kakashi thought. Naruto quickly found Sakura and helped her with the genjutsu, after which he convinced her to help him with Sasuke. Naruto chose not to comment on how tearful Sakura was when he said Sasuke needed help. So together they found Sasuke and dug him out. All the while Naruto noticed how embarrassed the Raven Head was. When Sasuke was firmly on his 2 feet, he was about to leave to look for Kakashi when Naruto stopped him. "Wait. I think I figured out the true meaning of this test." Sasuke frowned at the blonde. "What do you mean?" "When I spoke with Mizuki and later with Jiji, they pretty much confirmed that teams are supposed to be balanced. Jonin can also ask to take someone for apprenticeship, but that's rare. If there was a possibility of an apprenticeship, then why give us 2 bells?" He took a breath. Come to think of it, Konoha always prided itself on its ninjas' superb teamwork and the will of fire. Have you ever seen or heard of a genin squad that didn't consist of 3 genin and 1 jonin? I think that's the aim of this test, to see if we can work together despite the circumstances that puts us against each other. After all, we can't defeat an experienced jonin of Kakashi's caliber on our own, but we just might work together to get the bells. If my suspicions are correct, then it should be enough for us to pass. Jiji? I thought you're an orphan, Sakura commented, and Sasuke almost winced at how insensitive that sounded. I meant the Hokage. Oh. Both of them were quite curious what kind of relationship Naruto and their Hokage had. Nevertheless, no Sakura nor Sasuke could deny the sound reasoning, and in the end they agreed to work together. It wounded Sasuke's pride that he couldn't do this on his own strength. Kakashi handed his ass to him, but he wasn't so blind as not to realize he couldn't beat him just yet. So they started scheming their plan of action while utilizing all of their skills. From afar Kakashi smiled, maybe they have potential after all. Not long after, Sakura jumped out from the bushes and rushed to Kakashi. The man saw this and attempted genjutsu again, but Sakura was already prepared for that and dispelled it. The Pincat conjured 2 bunshins and engaged Kakashi in a taijutsu battle. He could have finished it in 1 hit, but he decided to play along to see what would happen. Sakura kept twirling around Kakashi and discreetly dropping ninja wire and trying to misdirect with the bunshins, until at last she threw 2 kunes on either side of the man and pulled hard with her hand. But the small chakra application, the wire immediately moved into action and tightened around Kakashi, effectively binding him. Sakura immediately leapt away, and the 2 other boys jumped down on opposite sides of Kakashi, with the jonin in the middle between them. They already had the final hand seal prepared as both released their jutsu. Heian. Gakakyu no Jutsu. 2 massive balls of fire, Naruto's being by far the larger one, quickly approached him from both sides, and Kakashi actually let out a bead of sweat roll down his forehead. That was a dangerous strategy, but so deadly. Sakura never stopped leaping and jumping back, trying to make as much distance as possible. The 2 balls of fire met and exploded in a fiery blaze, scorching a large area around it. Sasuke's and Naruto's fire fought for dominance before Naruto's finally won out and rolled forward. Kakashi successfully used Kawarimi to escape his predicament but had no more time to think as loads of shurikens flew out from the blazing fires in a wild pattern courtesy of Sasuke. Kakashi quickly deflected some while dodging others, and it's there, well he dodged in a specific angle that he saw something glisten in the air while being reflected by the sun even more ninja wire. Before he could dodge that, the wire was already circling around him and Naruto was stretching his hand out, appearing seemingly out of nowhere to grab the bells. Naruto's fingers brushed against the bells, and in an incredible show of flexibility, Kakashi twisted around from Naruto's hands, while at the same time kicking him and dodging the wire. Then Kunes came sailing at him, this time thanks for Sakura throwing them at a distance. These were a bit sloppier, so the Jonin had no troubles avoiding them with one roll. Kakashi looked up and saw Naruto with a cut on his hand and a bloodied knife in the other. But that was not what caught his attention. He immediately froze as terror overtook him. There, above Naruto, were two massive glowing eyes, veiny eyelids and red bloodshot eyes that seemed so big they looked unnatural. The Kakashi it seemed like they glared at him with all the hate and rage in the world and his mind started supplying an image of a great horned face and a sneer with fire coming out of the eyes. As quickly as it came it disappeared and not even a second later an alarm rang the Kakashi set up at some point. There in front of him stood the three genin. A Jinjutsu then, Kakashi thought well, it seems you have failed. Actually, Kakashi-sensei, we've got the bells, Naruto said and pointed at Sasuke. The Uchiha pulled out his hand from the pocket and sure enough he was holding two bells. Kakashi quickly looked at his waist only to find it empty when Naruto. Sakura shouted, did you really have to cut yourself to shock Kakashi-sensei like that? Naruto looked at Sakura and showed her his palm which was already healed all good, see. Besides, it got us the bells, didn't it? Yes, well Kakashi-sensei was probably scared for you. Naruto only shook his head but didn't choose to comment further, instead opting to turn to Kakashi to answer his initial question. When you were frozen for a moment or two, Sasuke was already in position to grab the bells. Fire was great cover so you wouldn't see where he was coming from. Must have been one of Naruto's special skills that Hokage-sama briefed me on. Looked like Jinjutsu but didn't feel like any I've seen before, he thought, and then acknowledged Naruto I see. A well thought out plan. Now Sasuke, you have two bells, but only two can pass. What are you going to do? Sasuke instead looked at Naruto and Sakura and then at the bells. He still thought Sakura was useless and weak, but she did her job well enough and helped a bit with planning. Naruto was definitely strong and could even be his rival. Besides, if Naruto was right then this was all a test of teamwork, so the right decision would be to give away his bells. And if Naruto was wrong, then he could always go and demand someone to apprentice under. So he threw the bells towards his other two teammates without saying anything, shocking both Naruto and Sakura. Are you sure about that? Kakashi asked. Sasuke only shrugged in reply, in that case you all pass. He said with an eye smile. Immediately all three genins relaxed before the excitement overtook them. Afterwards, Kakashi asked if they knew what the hidden meaning of the test was and he was pleasantly surprised when they answered correctly. Probably Naruto shared that with them if he already knew. Kakashi also stressed at how important teamwork is, imparting on them his philosophy of those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. The Jonin said that they will properly begin as a team tomorrow, as well as explain the schedule for the next few weeks' team meetings and training, then some missions before ending it for the day. Sasuke and Naruto were very excited to begin with the missions, and Kakashi had to hold down the urge to manically cackle. Kakashi just doesn't cackle. They were then free to go home for the day, and as the trio was leaving Kakashi called out for Naruto. Bidding Sakura and Sasuke goodbye, Naruto approached his sensei. Yes, Kakashi-sensei. Hokage-sama briefed me on some of your more obscure skillset, Kakashi said. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. But then he shouldn't have. He did express to his Jiji that he didn't want to keep all of this a secret from his team and he guessed that was one way for this situation to be approached. By informing the Jonin sensei. And it only made sense that he would be, after all, Jonin had to know about their team's capabilities to see if they could fit. I see. Was all Naruto said in the end. Why didn't you use and showcase any of those skills today? I didn't want to do something like that on our first test, thinking that their reaction wouldn't be too positive and could potentially jeopardize the result of the test itself, and I also wanted to show that I have skills outside my infernal arts, even if it's my chosen speciality. Besides, I did use one mild jutsu, and it turned out well in the end. No. Infernal arts, so that's what he called them, Kakashi mused. Hiruzen briefed him on Naruto and the rest of the team and their abilities, but never went into any specific details. He knew that whatever Naruto could do was obscure, unique, and ritualistic in nature and should be encouraged, not shunned. Kakashi didn't understand at the time, but after seeing the bloody palm and knife he was starting to get an inkling as to what the Hokage meant. That jutsu you did at the end, right? he asked. Naruto nodded and winced a bit. Calling what he did jutsus always felt kind of wrong to his ears, but there's nothing he could do about that. That's the way ninjas saw the world. Yes. It's only supposed to work on relaxed state of mind, so the only reason you were affected was probably because you weren't taking us seriously and weren't worked up enough. Kakashi hummed and then looked at the sky before addressing Naruto. Next time don't ever hold back, regardless of what you think the reaction of others might be. Such notions do not belong outside of the village's walls, where not going full out might mean the difference between your allies' life and death. He looked back at Naruto. Hokage-sama didn't give me any detail, so I am quite looking forward on discovering on what you will bring for Konoha. Now, off you go. Naruto nodded and waved him a goodbye and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Kakashi once again was surprised at that before chuckling. He sure had talented genin on his team. After a brief while he also disappeared from the clearing. It was time to inform the Hokage he has passed a team. Other jonin sure will be shocked. Last he heard there were bets going on about him failing yet another team. Chapter 4. Bloody Wave PT1. It's been 3 weeks since the forming of Team 7, and at first they were a bit rocky with their dynamics. Sasuke was still as broody as ever, rarely speaking more than necessary while trying to outperform everyone. Sakura proved to possess an above-average intellect and quite an analytical mind, but she rarely put any of that to use. Instead she fawned over Sasuke and defended him at any turn she could when Naruto was poking fun at him. Unlike Sasuke and Naruto himself, she didn't seem all that interested in training outside team meetings. The thing that happened was the light rivalry going on between Naruto and Sasuke. Sasuke always suspected Naruto was not as useless as he appeared to be at the academy. The teen observed Naruto enough to notice that his movements during spars were too clean, too calculated. That's why Sasuke even stopped calling him dope, and it obviously had nothing to do with the fact Naruto wasn't even responding to those jabs. Sasuke's suspicions were proven correct during the Genin test and subsequently during the training meetings. So far Sasuke haven't beaten Naruto in a spar even once. It was both infuriating and exhilarating to the young Uchiha. Sasuke was also baffled by Naruto's mastery of fire jutsu, but he was too prideful to ask about it. Kakashi himself was a weird sensei. Being chronically late forced Team 7 interact with each other more as they would always arrive couple of hours before Kakashi, in case this was the day he would be on time, which obviously hasn't happened so far. This led to them training together without Kakashi's supervision. By together of course it meant Naruto and Sasuke. Sakura chose to just sit and watch. They would always play around and come up with different battle strategies as a way to pass time. Naruto consistently tried to get Sakura involved in the training too. Sometimes she would, sometimes she wouldn't. And when she would, she'd always give up quite early because of her weak stamina. Both Naruto and Sasuke realized quite early that she truly is the weak link of the team. And Naruto told her exactly that and told her it would remain that way unless she put in any effort. The girl waved away his concerns, only saying he's being rude for no reason, to which Naruto would always reply with "Don't blame me if you die on a mission outside the village." He didn't raise the issue again afterwards. Kakashi didn't put any extra effort to fix this, and if a jonin, who knew what he was doing, didn't, then neither would Naruto. In one of the spars Naruto also revealed his ability when he shocked Sasuke and Sakura, who even screamed, by stabbing his own hand and starting to chant. It took a tremendous amount of willpower for Sasuke to pull his focus back and dodge the suddenly incoming blood whip that, in Sasuke's eyes, appeared out of nowhere. What followed after was a mad game of cat and mouse, as Naruto was working that whip like an expert and cackling like a madman. Kakashi might not cackle, but as it turned out Naruto did. Sasuke was good enough at avoiding the strikes, but he couldn't launch a counter-attack at all. When Naruto saw that Sasuke was good at dodging, he allowed the whip to ignite in the infernal flames, and Sasuke actually screamed Naruto. As now every strike that connected with the ground resulted in a tiny explosion. And with every second Sasuke was getting slower as fatigue set in. Needless to say, by the end of the spar, if it could be called that anymore, Sasuke was full of bruises and burns and on the brink of exhaustion. Kakashi, the sadist that he was, said, "Splendid. You will be doing this every day from now on, Naruto." He called it good training. Afterwards they asked him about his ability, and Naruto tried to be honest. He revealed he's made a pact with a god, and all his jutsus were ritualistic and worked on a sacrifice offering prayer basis. That's why they'd see him cutting or stabbing his palm and chanting in a language they couldn't understand. He explained that all the techniques they would see him do were mostly developed by himself, as that's how infernal arts worked. They, of course, were too skeptical about the god part. Other than that, the reactions were mixed. Sakura was the one who looked a bit pale at the idea of having to cut yourself every time, to which Naruto explained that due to this pact, he has been granted with such a high pain tolerance that he hardly feels pain anymore. Sasuke seemed to be intrigued by the ability and even asked a couple of questions, but that's all, it was a mere interest. He only believed it's just something obscure Naruto found somewhere that has nothing to do with higher power. Kakashi seemed indifferent, already knowing this from the Hokage. Of course, Naruto didn't reveal or elaborate that sacrifices also meant other things. But then they didn't need to know all of that just yet. In the end they were growing closer bit by bit. While it still looked like everything remained the same as it was upon graduation, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of real camaraderie developing between them all. Now, speaking of missions, they were horrified when they learned what D-rank missions actually entitled. But after being forced to do a couple of them, Naruto got to appreciate and love them. When he expressed this to their team, they thought he'd lost his mind. But for Naruto it was a chance to interact with the villagers. And villagers were forced to interact with him. Before they could just ignore him, look away, stare coldly, and because they didn't have to actively interact with him, they had no reason to change their opinion or behavior towards him. Sasuke and Sakura of course didn't understand the weird behavior people had towards Naruto, and when they'd ask Naruto he would always say it has been like this his whole life, and then he'd lie that he didn't know why. But now the civilians actually had to speak with Naruto, mostly because the teen was being stubborn. Naruto was always persistent on engaging with the clients as much as possible. His reasoning was that the more they interacted with him, the more they got to know him, the more they will see that he is more than just the jailer of the Kyuubi. Villagers that he did interact with were loath to admit, but the blonde teen was not too bad. Sure, he had an intimidating Eniri presence, but they chalked it down to him housing the Kyuubi. Other than that, he seemed bright, intelligent, compassionate, empathetic, and overall pleasant. Slowly they were changing their opinions for the better and started to see the guy rather than the jailer. And Naruto enjoyed that. He enjoyed interacting with these people because for him it meant he is on the right path. There was one time when they were reporting back in the mission building and it just so happened that Hiruzen was present. The old man was downright beaming at Naruto when he relegated to him the civilians' positive comments of him being a decent, hardworking sword. Naturally, Naruto couldn't help but beam at that as well. And with both the Hokage and Naruto beaming like two suns, the rest of the team felt like the room suddenly got too bright for no reason. But that was what happened in these 3 weeks. Today they would ask for a new, harder mission. As much as Naruto liked doing D-rank missions for the village, he was getting a bit antsy. It's been almost a month since they formed as a team and he was dying to get out of the village on some missions to get battle experience. He was excited to try some new techniques and rituals he had developed. Sasuke agreed with him. Unlike Naruto, he and by extension Sakura hated the D-ranks and considered them nothing more than useless chores. "Hey old man," Naruto called as they walked into the mission hall. Team 7 was still baffled at Naruto's relationship with the Hokage, anyone else would have been punished for such disrespect. They could clearly see that the Hokage favored the blonde, even though he tried to hide it. Naruto. Haruka, who was helping assigning missions today and sat in the mission hall, exclaimed, "Show some respect." Naruto looked at Haruka, and the man couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy at the look he was receiving. But then Naruto smiled and the feeling passed. The Hokage waved his hand signaling to Haruka that it's alright Team 7. Here for another missions. "Yes, Hokage-sama," Kakashi answered. "Right, so today we have weeding some gardens, catching Tora the cat again, painting. Actually, Gigi, can we get a proper C-rank mission? As much as I like these chores we've been doing them for 3 weeks now. Naruto, you can't just demand a mission from the Hokage when you get tired of D ranks. Every genin has to." Haruka-sensei. "I know all of that, hence why I am not demanding but asking." Haruka didn't know what to reply to that, so he just looked at the Hokage. "And I assume your other teammates share the same mind as you?" After seeing the rest of Team Nadi turn to Kakashi, "You think they are ready to take on a C-ranked mission?" Kakashi looked over the team, his eyes lingering on Sasuke and Naruto, before giving a nod to the Hokage. "I believe they are." "Very well." He then shuffled some scrolls on his desk before retrieving a specific one. "I think I have just the mission for you." He then signaled for his secretary, "Please bring in Tazuna-san." He turned to Team 7, "Your mission will be to escort Tazuna back to his house in Nami no Kuni. He is a bridge builder who was visiting Konoha for some business." "Ah, here he comes." Tazuna entered the room bringing with him a stench of alcohol. "Are these kids supposed to protect me? Some frail pink girl, a breeding emo," and he looked at Naruto and uncontrollable shivers ran through his spine. "Never mind. Is this the team then, Hokage-sama?" "Indeed it is. Team 7 led by Kakashi Haddock will be taking this mission." "Alright." He then turned to Kakashi, who he assumed was the Jonin leader. "Meet me at the main gates in an hour." And with that he left the room. "He was pretty rude," Sakura commented. "Ma, it can't be helped. You will meet all kinds of clients throughout your career," Kakashi commented. "Now as the man said, meet at the main gates in an hour. Go and pack and make sure you have enough supplies for at least a week or two." Dismissed. "Kakashi, remain." Hiruzen called. The team left and Kakashi approached the desk and accepted the scroll that Hokage was giving him. "There are more details in there," Hiruzen said. "There's a possibility that Tazuna-san wasn't completely honest with the mission request. There's a high probability that the mission parameters will change. If that happens, I won't have any available backup to send to you, so it will be up to your discretion if you will want to continue or not." Kakashi narrowed his eye and nodded. Those were the worst kind of situations when the client lies about the missions, and sadly that happened too often. If the Hokage's hunch was correct, then he will need to keep his eyes peeled. Understood. Anything else? Yes. It's regarding Naruto. You weren't briefed fully on the Mizuki incident, were you? Kakashi shook his head. No, I wasn't. I know what happened and that Naruto was involved, but no further details. Wait, Naruto was involved? Iruka asked. Hokage for a moment forgot that Iruka was there too. Yes. It's Naruto who apprehended Mizuki and saved the scroll of seals from getting into Orochimaru's hands. Iruka was shocked by that revelation. Firstly, Mizuki was a traitor for Orochimaru of all people. And secondly, Naruto, a fresh academy graduate, managed to apprehend a Chunin. It seemed like there was more to the team than meet the eye. At the end of the encounter, when we arrived at the scene, Hokage continued, Naruto looked ill. He was shaking, sweating, and his eyes were darting to Mizuki. He asked me if he may perform a ritual offering of Mizuki to his god. Both Iruka and Kakashi widened their eyes. That's right, he wanted to use the traitor as a living sacrifice. Naturally, I denied him, stating we needed him alive for T&I interrogation. So instead he asked if he could still make an offering while keeping Mizuki alive. He expressed that he needed that to further his training and skills. I allowed, and Naruto performed something he called a half offering. From what he told me afterwards, it did have the desired result of furthering his training, but a lot of it was still limited. Which is why I suspect Naruto is so excited to go on this mission. It would be a prime opportunity to meet an enemy to make a full offering of. Hokage finished. So Kakashi began, not quite sure what to say. Never in the history of Konoha did they have a shinobi who practiced something like that. It seemed dark and unethical, and for some reason it seemed like Hiruzen was allowing this. I don't know what to make of it, Hokage-sama. When you debriefed me about Team 7 and later when Naruto revealed it itself, I thought the extent of offering and ritual was him spilling his own blood and saying something in that language of his. Hokage shook his head. That's just the most convenient and quick method for him to use some of his techniques. He also has some very complex battle-ready techniques in his arsenal, and those truly are a complex in comparison than just stabbing himself. After all, I did help him develop some. Here Kakashi and Iruka looked horrified, and Hokage couldn't help but chuckle. Nothing so drastic. Young Naruto and I spent a lot of time together, and sometimes he would bounce some ideas with me. It's only because of those possible ideas that I can make an educated guess on the complexity of his techniques. Here he waved his hand. We are getting off track. What I wanted to say is that if you come into a situation where he asks permission to do something like that, then I urge you to allow him, granted if killing the enemy will not interfere with the mission. The other two men widened their eyes again, but Hokage-sama, isn't it just dark? Kakashi struggled to pick the right words. Iruka was rendered completely speechless about the information he was receiving, so he couldn't even give any input in the conversation. Tell me, do you know of a cult of Jashin? Receiving a negative, he continued, there used to be a whole clan of cultists that, according to obscure history texts, were immortal and couldn't be killed in battle. Did you know that Uzumaki clan had techniques that could summon the very Shinigami? In fact, the seal on Naruto that holds back the Bijuu was placed on him when Minato summoned the Shinigami itself. Shocked silence. No one knew for certain what transpired that day, and to think that their beloved Yondaime summoned a god. Or what about the legend of the Fire Temple? His founder was so strong that he was rumored to be Kami's champion. Well, they knew about that legend. But what does it have to do with Naruto? The point I'm trying to make is in all the legends those favored by the divine are unique and powerful. Konoha never could boast to ever have something so unique as a ninja who was favored by a divine, dark or not. Therefore in the past years I've tried to cultivate this in Naruto. If not only to atone for the mistakes I've done regards to the boy, but also to enable his growth and give him tools for his future. Jiraiya has reported that there are some organization that could be after Jinchuricus. Nothing concrete, but enough to keep an eye on it and prepare. He took a breath in and lit his pipe here to relax his nerves before continuing. Is it dark? Yes, but we are all veteran shinobi that kill every single day. Danzo, of course, is right when he says I've mellowed out in my old age and allowed my peaceful ways cloud my judgment when it comes to Konoha's strength. This is my way of trying to correct that. Naruto loves this village like no one else, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why after everything it has done to him. Yet his will of fire burns bright, even if his path is shrouded in darkness. If it means allowing him to use his enemies as sacrifices to bolster his power, and by extension Konoha's and act as its protector, then I will not shun it, and I strongly recommend you don't either. They are the enemies after all. He could be our greatest ninja, and that's not even because of the beast within him. Therefore I want to normalize it, for Naruto at least. And I've made sure he would never turn on the villagers. That was certainly a moving speech, and if Kakashi was being honest, then it alleviated the most pressing doubts he had. Has he done it before? Kill, I mean. Iruka asked. No, I don't believe so. What about his mind then? Killing for power, it corrupts. I apologize for bringing it up, Hokage-sama, but Orochimaru is a prime example of this. Hokage acquiesced his point. I thought of this at first too, but I don't think it would ever be an issue. He then turned to Kakashi. Keep what I said in mind. You're dismissed, don't be late to your client. Hi, Hokage-sama. An hour later Naruto, Sakura and Tazuna were at the main gate of Konohagakure, waiting for Kakashi to appear so that they could depart on their first proper mission. Don't tell me Kakashi-sensei is actually going to be 3 hours late again for a mission too. Naruto complained. Oh, you are Kakashi's new team? Izumo, one of the gate guards, asked. Yes, we are. Replied Sakura. This time it was the other gate guard who piped in, Kitetsu, congratulations to be the very first team he has passed. You must be exceptional genins. The first team? Yeah. Izumo nodded. Hokage-sama has been trying to get him a team for a while now, but apparently they all kept failing his genin test. Kakashi suddenly appeared in a swirl of leaves. Now, what kind of rumors have you been telling my cute little genin? We didn't get a chance to share any yet. You're late. Mama, I promised to be on time, but a black cat crossed the street, so I had to take a detour. Liar. Kakashi I smiled and turned to the gate guards. We will be on our way now. Enjoy your first mission outside the village. And with that the band moved out in a leisurely pace. After all, their client was a civilian who couldn't exactly tree hop. They walked in a comfortable silence for a couple of minutes until Tazuna broke it. So this is your first time outside the village? He asked uncertainly. It is. Sakura replied. Don't worry, Tazuna-san, you are in capable hands. If any bandits come our way then my team will be able to deal with them. You also have me here. Kakashi added. Yeah, bandits, Tazuna muttered. If you're sure. Say, Tazuna-san, does the Wave country have? And so for the next quite a while Sakura was interrogating the client about Wave and the man himself. Turns out his country was occupied by a tyrant Gato from the Gato Corporation. The vile man kept draining the land and its inhabitants of all the resources for his own selfish greed, and there were no ninjas in the country to protect them. Tazuna himself was building a super important bridge which would connect to the mainland. The idea would be that it would open many trade routes through Wave, and that in turn would exponentially boost the economy of the country and would allow them to in time recover and eventually let them find a way to do something about Gato. How are we going to cross to Wave? Naruto finally asked. It surrounded by water, is it not? Tazuna nodded. I have a brave friend waiting for us with a boat at the shore. We should hurry up. No sooner did he say that as two shadows leapt from a nearby puddle and wrapped Kakashi in a metallic sharp chain. The two assailants pulled hard and Kakashi was severed in two. Sakura screamed. One down. Get the bridge builder, Maizu. On it, Gozu. They both stretched their deadly chain and rushed at the genins and Tazuna, aiming to skewer them all in one sweep. Naruto reacted first by throwing a kunai at the middle of the chain, making the two missing nin skid back. Sakura, protect Tazuna-san, Naruto shouted. Sasuke. Sasuke nodded and ran through hand seals together with Naruto. Heian. Kikaku no Jutsu. Two balls of fire emerged from the teens and combined as they approached the assailants and then exploded in a fiery storm. Sakura and Tazuna had to cover their eyes from the intensity of the flames. Screams were heard from within the fire. When the flames died down they could see the one who spoke first. Gozu lay on the ground, unmoving and suffering from burns. He seemed unconscious but still alive if the breathing with the rise and fall of his chest was any indicator. The other ninja, Maizu, managed to release the chain from his gauntlet in time and dodged the brunt of the jutsu. You will pay for this. He screamed. Before he could do anything else, Naruto flashed behind him in a burst of speed and delivered a powerful kick to his back. Due to Naruto's superior strength and the momentum of the speed, Maizu was sent flying towards Sasuke. Sasuke didn't hesitate and delivered a follow-up jumping roundhouse kick to the enemy's face, sending him back towards Naruto. Naruto in turn grabbed a kunai and attempted to stab Maizu while he was still in the air, but the enemy ninja managed to recover and twist to avoid the lethal attack. However, he didn't manage to avoid it completely. The kunai made a deep gash on his calf, and that was enough for Naruto to start chanting. Maizu landed on the ground and immediately winced at the pain and had to make another roll to land on his good leg. This moment of hesitation was enough for Naruto to complete his technique, binding of hemorrhage. 4 bloody tendrils shot out from the gash on Maizu's calf and embedded themselves in the ground, and Maizu screamed in pain as he tried to move that leg. Sasuke was already upon him with a fist coming up towards his face. Maizu blocked it and attempted to swipe Sasuke with his claw, but Sasuke leaned away from the attack. Naruto, once again using his superior speed, appeared behind the enemy and knocked him out with a blunt side of his kunai. The binding jutsu dissipated after that. Well, Naruto said, that was kinda exciting. And rather easy. HN. I'm glad you agree. BB, but Kakashi-sensei, Sakura wailed until a voice rang nearby. I what? Kakashi said with an eye smile as he came out of some bushes. Yo. You're alive. She breathed in relief. Of course he is, Naruto deadpanned. Did you not see the substitution log or the lack of blood? Sakura looked at where Kakashi was cut and indeed only saw a log there which made her blush in embarrassment. All she could do was to shake her head. Why would you trick us? Tazuna demanded, and then he started sweating when Kakashi gave him a glare. I sensed them a while ago. Besides, it hasn't rained for days, and then there's a puddle on a dry street. Seemed suspicious and I knew it's a possibility of a ninja ambush. I wanted to see who they would go after. Me, a ninja with a sizable bounty on my head, or you or client? It was you they were after. Did you know Gato hired ninjas? Yes, I suspected. He deflated. Then you deliberately lied to the Hokage. Not only that, but you deliberately put my team at risk with wrong information that you could have shared. The Demon Brothers, if I remember Bingo book correctly, are C-rank missing nin from Kurigakure, which automatically puts this mission as at least B-rank due to further unknown ninja threats. This is not a mission for Genin as inexperienced as my team. Azuna dropped his head in shame. We didn't have the funds to request a higher ranking mission. In fact, we gave everything we could scrape together and it was only enough for a C rank. I am really sorry. Without this mission, without the bridge, without any help we just won't survive. The Hokage, and by extension Konoha, is not that cruel to ignore a plight such as this. I am more than sure we could have struck a deal. Lying is never an option for honest missions. The right thing to do here would be to cancel the mission and return to the village to arrange something else. Irtazuna dropped on his knees and begged please. I can't afford to spend any more time than I already have by coming to Konoha. Every second I am gone is another second one of my countrymen are suffering. I am also super worried about my daughter and grandson. Please don't abandon the mission. I am very sorry for lying. Kakashi sighed. What a bad form of guilt tripping. Hokage's hunch has proved to be right though. He considered his options and looked at his genin. Naruto could definitely hold his own and by extension Sasuke too. Sakura, however, was completely unprepared for such scenarios as evident by her reactions. He could see that Naruto wanted to continue with the mission. Sasuke seemed completely indifferent to the man's plight, but Kakashi knew that the Raven Head also wanted to continue with the mission to at least challenge himself with real combat. It will be up to the genins. They are after all at the most risk here, so I will the decision to them. The genin blinked at that proclamation. I say we go, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said, can't really just leave these people suffering. I agree, Sasuke added, I want to face new opponents. These were weak. Only you would go on a dangerous missions for some fun, Naruto rolled his eyes. Kakashi then looked at the only girl in the group and she shakily said well, if both Naruto and Sasuke are ready to go, then so will I. Then that's decided. Tazuna-san, we will continue with the mission. Azuna's expression immediately changed, now suddenly in high spirits. Thank you. Thank you so much. Off we go to build my super bridge. Hold on. Naruto called what about them? And pointed at the demon brothers who were laying on the ground, unconscious. I will tie them to a tree. Then I will send a message to Konoha about the change of circumstances and inform that we managed to apprehend enemy shinobi, Kakashi replied. Oh, I see. You almost sound disappointed, Naruto. Kakashi commented. Well, it's truly nothing. Naruto trailed off. Kakashi sighed as he remembered the Hokage's words. To normalize it, Hokage-sama mentioned something like this before we left. Do what you have to do. It was almost disturbing at how Naruto brightened up. Really? Thanks. He then looked around and saw Sasuke's and Sakura's intrigued faces. Right here. He received an eye smile. You have to remember we are still on a mission. He then looked at Tazuna. For how long is your friend waiting for us? For a couple more hours at the least. He won't leave without me and I didn't exactly know how long I will take to get a mission. The Jonin nodded and looked at Naruto. Nevertheless, we don't have the time to look for a suitable place, so here and now will have to suffice. If this is something you have to do, then you will have to learn to be comfortable with doing it anywhere with anyone present. Sakura, Sasuke, he addressed the other two members of his team, this will probably get bloody and unsettling. If you don't want to experience something dark then you can proceed further with Tazuna. Naruto and I will catch up when he's done. There shouldn't realistically be any threats ahead. For Naruto it's not so much he had an issue with the location as with people seeing the darker aspects of his infernal arts. What if his own comrades would be too horrified? What about the clients? If they heard Konoha was practicing human sacrificing, then he had no doubt fear of common folk would follow. He then steeled his nerves. Naruto does not get nervous. He demonically cackles. No matter how the world perceives his art he would always do it for the sake of Konoha, even if he had to do it in loneliness. It changed his life in a good way and it would be stupid to abandon his practices just because of some fear. Not to dismiss it how flexible and powerful it was. Naruto nodded and ignoring everyone's stares got to work. I will use the burnt one. He probably won't survive the weight anyway. He got hit dead on by our fire jutsu. Not waiting for Kakashi's affirmation, he took out his special knife and approached Gozu, who was still unconscious. "What is he going to do, sensei?" Sakura asked as she opted to remain. Even Sasu couldn't deny he was extremely curious, to the point he fully faced the scene. He understood it was something to do with Naruto's mysterious techniques. "If you're intent to stay, then wait and see. He is going to do a ritualistic sacrifice, other than that I have no idea either." "Ritualistic sacrifice?" Tazuna asked uncertainly. Kakashi shrugged and then smiled at the bridge builder. "You're perfectly safe." Everyone immediately shut up and looked at Naruto, who already had his hand cut open and had started chanting. Every ninja present noticed that this chanting felt different than what they've experienced before when he used the infernal arts in combat. Naruto drew a large circle around the downed man using his bloody knife and even dared to channel a bit of chakra through it. With this circle I mark the beginning of the final rite of passage. As he closed the circle, there was a tiny pulse of power that everyone felt. Valnaern accepted the rite and deemed the offering worthy, so Naruto could proceed. He sliced his palm again to spill more blood and used it to draw an even larger pentagram outside the circle so that the circle was inside the star. He was thankful that the infernal arts of his current level allowed him to manipulate blood to a small extent, otherwise he'd completely bleed out drawing diagrams of such proportions. He chanted his thanks, chanted that this kill will be in honor of his god, this offering the ultimate pact and the proof of his power that was bestowed upon Naruto. Another pulse of power, this one a bit stronger than last, and the onlookers released a gasp as 5 points of the pentagram burst into tall pillars of flames before calming down to the sizes of a candle. Using the knife, he then carved a symbol for hair and a circle on the ground at the northernmost point of the pentagram. "Thank you for bestowing upon me the blessing of the hair so that our enemies could never escape." He repeated the same for the bear and the stag, carving those symbols at the bottom 2 points. "Thank you for bestowing upon me the blessing of the bear so that no enemy might hurt me and mine. Thank you for bestowing upon me the blessing of the stag so that I could stand tall and proud as your champion." All the symbols ignited and remained lit. Next was the most exciting part for Naruto, for even he didn't know what would happen. He positioned the man inside the star so that each of his protruding body parts, head, arms, and legs, was facing each of the points of the pentagram. As an afterthought, he used the blood already on the ground to bind Gozu so he doesn't thrash around. The pain of what will follow will definitely wake him up, but only the 5th strike will be the killing one. He took his knife and positioned to strike Gozu's left hand. "He's not, is he?" Sakura asked, horrified. No one answered her. "What is this weird feeling? What language is this?" "For power," and Naruto stabbed Gozu's hand, immediately waking up the burnt man, who screamed in pain. The fire at the point nearest to the left hand increased in size and turned crimson. Gozu tried to thrash and get away, but the bindings prevented him from that. A faint pulse of power was felt in the air, making the hairs on everyone stand up. For knowledge, right hand quickly followed suit with its adjacent fire pillar. Pulse of power. For understanding and comprehension, left feet. Fire. Pulse. For control and force of will, right feet. Fire. Pulse. The power was now palpable in the air. Everyone wanted to turn away, but they couldn't. No matter how dark, it was transfixing, intoxicating. And now for the crescendo. "I give myself to you just as you give yourself to me. I am your champion as you are my god and master. I am protector of my people, and you are my weapon and shield. Everything and anything to you, everything and anything to me. This is my offering for your eternal glory. This is for you, Valnaern." Fire and blood, smoke and ashes. For Valnaern. And he channeled chakra into his knife and stabbed it right through Gozu's heart. A wave of power emitted upon point of contact, making everyone present stumble. The fire pillars on the points of pentagram shot up and started swirling around the whole ritual scene before rushing into the ground and earth itself. From there, the infernal fires started dashing and darting across the star and the circle, carving lines, symbols, shapes along all the edges of the blood. The fires were completing the ritual circle as if it had a mind of its own. But Naruto didn't see any of this. He left the knife in Gozu's heart as he kneeled inside the ritual circle, his head thrown backward, staring at the sky with unseeing, unblinking eyes, and his mouth opened in a silent scream, savoring every single iota of power that was channeled into him, out of him, and through him. Then the fires calmed down and dissipated, only leaving behind an intricate and incredibly complex ritual circle made of charred black blood and ash. Kakashi could only compare it to some intricate fuinjutsu. There was an unnatural quietness in the air, no tree leaves shuffling, no birds chittering, a lull in the air, almost like nature itself was waiting with a bated breath. It made Kakashi feel alert because he knew from experience that this kind of lull usually led to an ambush. And then there was it. A strong pulse of power emitting from Naruto. It made Tazuna's and Sakura's legs shake, not out of fear but something else. For Naruto, however, Valnaern accepted his plea and his ritual. Knowledge, power, understanding, comprehension was running through his mind in a rapid pace. Everything he read up to so far suddenly made infinitely more sense. Hidden aspects of his languages, diagrams, rituals, beings, blood, symbols, all of these things flashing at a fast pace, embedding itself in all the relevant parts of his brain. His pupils were wildly shaking and darting back and forth as if trying to see something invisible. Another pulse, this one stronger than before. Even Kakashi's and Sasuke's legs started shaking. What is this? Sasuke wondered in true bewilderment. And now Naruto understood. Understood all the aspects of his infernal arts. If before he just practiced and did them as instructed, now he comprehended it all. He still had much to learn, but now he could truly begin living and breathing life into the infernal arts. Suddenly Naruto's head snapped forward and he extended his arms in a wide gesture, and as if by command massive deep crimson stalagmites sprung from the ground where the three symbols of his blessings were around the star. Naruto stared hard at those and suddenly his vision became dark. He blinked a couple of times and found himself in a strange sewer. Completely still water was covering his feet up to his ankles. Naruto looked around and noticed that the corridor he was in was very well lit despite not having any clear light source. All kinds of different pipes were running across the walls, blue, red, and black crimson. All of them twisting and intertwining and disappearing in all directions. Upon closer inspection he also noticed that the walls in the corridor were irregularly adorned with what appeared to be shiny black and crimson gems or stones, same color as one of the pipes. Well, no point standing here and waiting for something, Naruto mused. Despite the sudden change in scenery from being outside on the roads performing a ritual and then ending up here, he felt pretty safe. No wariness or unease of new surroundings that somehow to him felt familiar. And so he proceeded forward. He ignored all the different pathways and doors that appeared on his way. He allowed his feet to automatically drag him forward. After what felt like forever he finally arrived at his destination, a massive room with an enormous gilded cage at the back of it, gates of which was held by a paper seal. Naruto immediately put one and one together and surmised that he somehow managed to access the part of his mind that housed the seal where the Kyuubi is held. Ignoring that for now, he looked around. Next to the cage there was a medium-sized smooth stalagmite growing from the ground. It was the same color as the stone in the walls he noticed earlier, dark with red streaks coming and no discernible pattern. The red streaks seemed to pulse once in a while. In fact, in a closer inspection, the same red streaks could be noticed all over the cage too. He observed that all three different colored pipes seemed to originate from somewhere in this room and were somehow connected to one or another element here. The dark crimson pipes seemed to originate from the smooth rock, the red pipes seemed to disappear behind the cage, and the blue ones didn't have a specific starting point, they were just twisting around the large room before disappearing into many hallways. He also idly noticed that there was one pipe which was seemingly connecting the stalagmite and the cage. A loud, terrible growl spread through the chamber, so my jailer finally graces me with his presence. Two large red slitted eyes popped open behind the bars. Kyuubi, Naruto nodded. He'd be lying if he said he wasn't intimidated. This being in front of him was rumored to create natural disasters with a single flick of its tails, and now all that was holding it back was a paper seal. It's good that you have common sense. You're awfully civil. I was expecting something more of a wild beast. The Kyuubi snarled, hitting Naruto with some hot breath that made his long hair flutter. Of course you would. That's what humans were always painting us as, chakra batteries of no intelligence. Feared for our power, yet hunted for it too. If it's any consolation then I do apologize, Naruto said sincerely, my ignorance of your nature stems from not coming across any information to say otherwise. The question still remains, if not for a wild beast, then I expected at least someone furious enough to lash out in anger for this imprisonment. And I am furious. The mighty Kyuubi no Yoko locked away again and again, always something stopping me from being free. It said mockingly, nevertheless, I am exercising as much control simply for my self-preservation. Self-preservation. The Kyuubi stepped forward within the cage, revealing its towering dark orange body. Naruto had to practically crane his neck upwards to look it in the eyes. Yes, Kyuubi nodded. Are you familiar with the nature of the seal that holds me? Naruto shook his head in negative ignorant. It is designed to slowly trickle my own chakra into your system. It's been doing that since you've been but a babe, that's why you have such large quantity of dense chakra. That makes sense. Ever since you came into contact with that dark god of yours and started practicing the rituals, another power source manifested here. Kyuubi pointed at the dark rock next to its cage. Maybe calling it a power source is wrong, it's still your chakra but different. It's what enables you to do whatever it is you're doing. Similar how Kekkei Genkai would have been represented in one way or another in other mindscapes. How do you know what I have been doing? Over longer period of time, the more of my chakra gets siphoned off, I've learnt that the more the seal weakens. This is your mind and it's been 13 years now. Sometimes I am able to push and see glimpses of your life outside, especially when my chakra is being used for healing your body. It replied, ever since that rock appeared, the chakra siphoning from me was diverted into that stone, and from that stone to you. It's like an extra converter, an additional cog in the mechanism, if you will. I do not know its purpose, but what I do know is that the seal keeping me locked is no longer deteriorating. Instead, your usage of your rituals is changing the seal itself. I feel I am more linked with you and the stone than I've ever felt before. Dear Kyuubi regarded Naruto with somewhat cold expression, even though its eyes were still holding so much fury. Couple of years ago my fate was certain I would wait until the seal is weak enough and push my will onto you, and then break free. If I die in the process then it's no bother, I would reform. Now I am uncertain of my own future. I do not want to end up as a sacrifice to an unknown god with no chance of reforming, not knowing how the change to the seal is affecting me. And it is in your best interest to be at least amiable until you know for sure what is happening with your life, Naruto finished for it. Kyuubi snarled but didn't offer a response. Thank you for sharing this with me. I will try to make it bearable for you. At the end of the day you are as much stuck with me as I am with you. Thank you for always healing me though. Kyuubi nodded. How did I end up here? Do you have the ability to pull me in? Now that we have met and you are aware of this place, I will possibly be able to drag you in here with strong enough pull. I will also be able to talk to you. At the very least, thanks to your god, my container is not entirely useless and weak. Maybe you won't be an embarrassment to be my Jinchuriki. As an afterthought, Kyuubi also said it didn't know why Naruto was pulled in. It wasn't the Kyuubi's doing. Your presence is starting to irritate me now. Do what you came here to do and leave. And with that the Biju retreated back into the shadows of its seal. But that's the thing, he didn't come here consciously, so something must have dragged him into his own mindscape. Naruto looked around again, and his attention was drawn to the dark pillar which was softly pulsing. He slowly approached it and put his hand on it. Immediately there was a jolt of pain that shot through his body, and he heard in the distance a sound that resembled that of breaking chains. But this he was pulled out of his mind. Not even 2 seconds had passed since Naruto got pulled into his mindscape. When he returned to his body, he came with an enormous wave of power that knocked everyone off their feet. The land around the ritual circle burned and cracked and in an instant was turned into a barren field of red and black. The power was so palpable that Kakashi felt it vibrating in his very bones. It wasn't like killer intent or chakra pressure. It was something that affected them all on more of a spiritual level. It was intoxicating, and part of him didn't want for this to stop. It made him feel safe and protected, as absurd as it sounded. He looked around and saw the others in the same state. And then it was gone like it was never there to begin with. Everyone took a deep breath, but not of relief, but because they lost that feeling. The stalagmite scattered into dust as did the ritual circle and the earth around it. Everything returned back to normal. The only thing showing that something supernatural happened was panting Naruto, who was on his knees and hands. Naruto? Kakashi called out. Naruto snapped himself out of his daze and sat up. I'm alright, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi nodded as he stood up and approached the blonde teen. He looked at the corpse next to him and his eyes widened. Gozu looked like he lived through many more years than he actually did. His skin was pale and wrinkled, his hair completely gray, his whole body seemed to lose a lot of weight with the clothes that remained covering him like a blanket. Naruto finally stood up and suddenly he felt better than he ever did. Re-energized and happy. And he was extremely excited to finally be granted the power and complete understanding of his arts so that the next time he fights, the enemy would be in a world of surprise. I'm alright, Naruto repeated and stood up. What happened to him? Kakashi asked. I don't know. Usually during the rituals Bethrazin takes whatever offerings I make, that's why my blood always dissolves and disappears. I can only take a guess that a whole body was too big and intense to just take from this physical world. The results of the ritual made themselves no differently. That's only my guess. Either way I am ready to go. Kakashi nodded. I will tie the other one and send a message. Wait with the rest of the team. Naruto nodded and practically skipped to his team with a wide grin. What ensued was a bit of an awkward silence while Kakashi was working. A minute later they finally resumed their journey at a relaxed pace. Naruto was glad that there wasn't any fear, horror or even disgust from his team and the client. Sakura seemed apprehensive, sure, but she also seemed more confused than anything else. Kakashi looked indifferent, but then it was always hard to tell with him. Sasuke looked contemplative and curious, and Tazuna definitely looked confused, but there was also a sense of wariness in his gaze. The blonde just sighed. You can just ask questions if you have any. You all look constipated, I'm not about to go and start cutting you up. Sasuke snorted at that comment. Well, Sakura began uncertainly. What is it that we felt? Naruto looked at her. Felt? Yeah, several times throughout your ritual, she gulped. There was some sort of power coming off you several times. The final time, just before everything disappeared, it brought us all to our knees. Huh. I didn't know that these rituals have an effect on people. Well, the thing is, again she looked uncertainly at Naruto from the corner of her eyes. By all rights I should be horrified and disgusted by what I witnessed. You did kill someone essentially in cold blood. But for the life of me I can't figure out why I don't. Instead there was this feeling of pure bliss, pleasure, excitement and safety, Tazuna helpfully supplied and Sakura only nodded to that. Some logical part of me does feel uneasy that you just killed a man in a very disturbing fashion, but the bigger part of me never felt safer. I don't want to witness something like that again, but I do want to feel the same way. It's a weird paradox. Something what you describe is actually common in ninjas, Kakashi added, we kill every day, that's our job here. Sakura looked a bit green, but most of us don't really enjoy it and sometimes some of us even feel guilt. However, we would gladly kill hundreds of innocents if it meant protecting our village and its citizens. I'm sure you feel the same way. After all, you did lie to the Hokage and requested a mission knowing the risks. But your country's well-being is all that mattered. Tazuna winced but agreed. Here Kakashi turned to Naruto in curiosity. I do share the same feeling though. When you began your ritual, I did feel a bit of distaste, but then when the first wave of the power hit my mind suddenly was supplying me completely different feelings. Why is that? From what I've read and what you're telling me I might have a theory. Give me one moment. Kakashi wanted to say they don't have any more time to waste, but Naruto already had his knife out and slashed his palm. He raised a palm and aimed it somewhere in the forest. Blood bolt. The bolt made of his blood shot from his palm and in a blink of an eye flew in the bushes. In a burst of speed Naruto disappeared and then reappeared back with a rabbit in his hand who was quickly bleeding and dying. Not wasting any time, Naruto drew a circle on the ground with his blood and then put rabbit in the middle of it. Accept this small offering as a testament of my power to murder my enemies. For destruction and chaos, for blood and glory, no one shall stand in my path. All will die and perish in your name. A small pulse of power, and the rabbit slowly, almost uncertainly, dissolved layer by layer and got absorbed into the circle, before the circle itself flashed crimson and disappeared into the wind. Naruto blinked. He just got an incredibly strong feeling of confusion, and then it passed. Naruto widened his eyes in realization, but he put that new information for later. He then turned to his companions. Did you feel anything this time? Revulsion. Sasuke said. Still felt the pleasure, but also a lot of disgust. I felt shudders go through me, complete opposite of earlier, and this was tame by comparison. Completely horrifying. Tazuna added. Seeing that everyone shared the same way, it confirmed Naruto's theory. That confirms my theory then. I am not sure whether it's actually true, but they resumed walking and Kakashi asked, what is it? What you feel is most likely linked to my prayer during the ritual, Naruto explained. My god called me a protector, so in all my prayers in the rituals I do, I always try to make it a point to say I am doing it for the protection of others. Not in all rituals, but in most. So I think what you feel is the chakra intent. Kind of like killing intent that ninjas can give off, but instead of seeing your own death and playing on your fears, you feel whatever the practitioner, me in this case, based their pact with their god on. You don't understand the language I speak in, but with this rabbit just now I essentially made an offering based on murder and destruction, whereas in the previous one I said I am a protector of my people. And here you have your feeling. That's quite elaborate, Kakashi said, but thank you. It explains a few things as far as our mixed perception goes. I'm just glad it didn't scare any of you away, Naruto muttered. I really want to be scared and disgusted, Sakura told him, but I can't bring myself to. If it's to protect us, as horrible as it all looks, it's also kind of noble. Naruto shrugged. Maybe you will feel different when you will get your first kill. That shut Sakura up as she was silently contemplating her future. Who is your god? Sasuke finally asked. Strangely, he was the quietest so far, and while usually that's normal, everyone knew Sasuke was quite opinionated in his own right. They could see he had 101 question he wanted to ask, but he had remained quiet. Ethrizan. I never heard of him. I don't think anyone has, Naruto shrugged. He is an ancient, old god from the old world. The knowledge of him has not survived all these eons. Old world? Sakura asked, intrigued. She was the most scholarly present from her team, so new pieces of information and history really interested her. Naruto frowned before replying. It's too long of a history lesson, to be honest, and even I don't understand quite a lot of it. It's a long time before elemental nations were even a thing. Oh, Sakura muttered. Will you tell me about it sometime? Sure. If no one knows of him, then how did you come across him? Sasuke pressed. You didn't just start cutting things up. I don't actually know about that, Naruto honestly replied. From everything I've read, they always say gods work in mysterious, often illogical ways. Maybe it's something specific I thought, maybe it's something I did, or something I showed an interest in. There are too many, and oddly enough, not enough variables that happened in my life to tell you exactly why and how it happened. And no, I didn't randomly start doing rituals of my own making in hope some god would answer. That's ridiculous. Sasuke, Naruto narrowed his eyes. You didn't think of doing that, did you? Sasuke. It seems like a quick way to power. Sasuke shrugged. How I am even supposed to kill that person if I can't beat you? Naruto shook his head. There are no such things as quick ways to power. And if there is, then there is always a steep price for them, he said, even I have to pay in my blood. Besides, I worked really hard for the past several years to be where I am now, and I still train hard to get even stronger. Maybe if you have a problem with your lack of progress in your training, then you have the wrong goals. It's all about the motivation. Sasuke whipped around, seething. Don't you dare say that. Naruto shrugged again, not quite concerned about Sasuke's anger. I am just pointing out the obvious. Each one of us have goals, and how we are at this moment represents how strongly we believe in those goals. Sasuke didn't respond to that and merely walked a bit quicker to get away from that argument. Despite the pure anger those words triggered in him, part of him couldn't shake off the feeling that Naruto did make a good point. You shouldn't antagonize him so much, Naruto, Kakashi commented. We all have things we have to deal with. I only expressed my opinion. If he has a problem with it, then it's his problem. People who have no issues wouldn't get a reaction like that if they couldn't relate. Maybe saying it out loud would spur him on thinking about it rather than ignore it. Kakashi chose not to pursue this line of topic. Sasuke's mental state has been under scrutiny ever since the Uchiha massacre, but instead of getting professionals to help him, the higher-ups decided to leave the team be. Maybe Naruto's constant words and behavior towards the Uchiha would force Sasuke to self-reflect. Time would tell whether it would end up well or make the situation worse. At this time they finally reached Izuna's friend, who was anxiously waiting for them. Hushed greetings and a brief conversation later, all of them were on the boat halfway through to the land of waves. The mood was quite gloomy, Naruto noted. Sasuke absorbed in his own thoughts while openly scowling. And Sakura was in deep contemplation. The girl still couldn't get over how mixed her feelings was towards what she saw. She knew from what little time she had spent with the blonde that he was a good person, but the ritual she witnessed twisted her perception of him a little bit. And that was what was confusing to her. Part of her wanted to be absolutely disgusted with Naruto, but the bigger part of her really wasn't. What Naruto said also rested heavy on her mind, how her view of the world would change when she killed for the first time. She was no stranger to the idea that she would have to do it. The academy did go over that, and whole shinobi history was full of wars and strife. Naruto did it for the village, but it still felt a bit morally wrong. Would her view of it change when she would take her first life? She was glad Naruto was eager to explain his practices and even make an example later on. Because of that, she could still proceed to treat him the same way despite her heavy thoughts. Whoa, Tazuna-san. Naruto exclaimed as quietly as he could. Is that the bridge you're building? Every turned to look at where Naruto was pointing, and all of them were quite impressed. A massive bridge of stone and bricks was towering over them as they slowly sailed past. It clearly was still incomplete, but they guessed it wouldn't take that long to finish the job. Sakura finally broke her silence. How long would it take to finish it? A week or two, depending if nothing goes wrong, Tazuna responded, quite proud. You are doing a work of the saint, Tazuna, his friend added with a smile. Dear Kakashi hummed and asked something that was on everyone's minds. I wonder why did Gato even let you build this much? I don't know, Tazuna shrugged. I guess he didn't believe I would get anywhere with it, so didn't consider it a threat enough to waste resources on. I started on my own, and it's only after quite some time that I managed to get all the men of the village help me, at which point the bridge was already under the construction at an incredible speed. I guess that's when he realized his mistake and started sending his goons to the bridge. I see. Soon after they noticed a thick mist roll in which only thickened when they finally disembarked on the other side. Tazuna's friend wished them good luck and safe travels before quickly returning to the waters and disappearing. They silently made their way forward while keeping their eyes peeled for something out of the ordinary. The heavy mist was truly making them all feel uneasy. After a little while, Naruto suddenly threw a kunai in nearby bushes, only to reveal a scared rabbit. Before anyone could say anything, Kakashi shouted, "Get down!" and grabbed Tazuna to throw him onto the ground as he followed his own command. A massive cleaver blade sailed above their heads and embedded itself into a tree where the rabbit was at just now. A second later, an imposing man with bandages around his mouth and a slashed kiri headband appeared standing on top of the handle of the massive blade. Kakashi immediately turned serious as he recognized the threat they were facing: Zabuza Mamachi, a rank missing nin from Kurigakure no Sato, known as the Demon of the Hidden Mist. He then addressed his team formation around the client, protect him at all costs. If I full retreat, we won't abandon you, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto exclaimed. Look at that, Kakashi no Sharingan and his little genins who had probably never seen real combat. Zabuza laughed. You were quite lucky to never have encountered the demon brothers. Sharingan. Sasuke thought as he narrowed his eyes. The missing nin formed a hand sign, and the mist around them thickened so much they could barely see further than their outstretched hand. Kakashi immediately pulled up his headband, revealing a lone Sharingan eye with 3 tomo in it. Zabuza is a master of silent killing technique. Keep all your senses open, he could attack from anywhere. 8 points. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart, a voice boomed from all around them. And they immediately were hit with a wave of killer intent. Naruto managed to shrug it off, and so did Kakashi, though both of them broke a sweat. Sasuke and Sakura, however, their legs were shaking as they imagined their own deaths that would happen any moment. Even Tazuna was on the floor in fear. Naruto narrowed his eyes and quickly cut his palm that elicited a laugh from Zabuza that reverberated all around them. Hahaha, look at this Kakashi, one of your own is even cutting himself in fright. Poor little genins are about to die without even living for a bit. You know, you call yourself ninjas, but you are only just kids. Only when you spill blood may you even use the title ninja. Don't do anything rash, Naruto, Kakashi whispered, knowing full well that Naruto cutting himself meant a jutsu from him was coming. You have mastered over 1,000 jutsus. Is there a fuetin in your arsenal to blow away the mist? Naruto whispered back. An exaggeration I do, but if I start hand seals then I can't defend myself. I will give you an opening, Naruto whispered back. Kakashi wanted to protest, but had no time as Zabuza laughed. An opening? You're funny, kid. Suddenly Kakashi shouted Naruto. However, thanks to his blood sensing technique that Naruto only understood to master after the latest ritual, Naruto sensed the incoming attack and could dodge the attack in time. Zabuza's cleaver narrowly missed Naruto's arm before retreating back into the mist. Naruto used this opportunity to smear some of his blood across Kakashi's back before squeezing his palm and spilling some of his blood onto the ground. A lucky dodge, good job, kid, Zabuza mocked. Naruto waved his bloody palm and manipulated the blood on the ground to make a circle around them all, and then started chanting. He was glad that after the sacrifice his control of blood exponentially increased to allow drawing ritual circles with a literal wave of his hand. What's this? Blood manipulation and delirious muttering. Haha, your kids are hopeless, Kakashi. I expected something more from you. Maybe I should start with that pink-haired bitch. She seems like she never seen real combat, might as well spare her the trouble and kill her first. Demonic barrier. Physical plane. Naruto exclaimed in the ancient language as he finished his chant. Immediately, within a second, 5 bloody lines expanded from the bloody circle and connected above Team 7 and Tazuna, and a crimson-black sheen connected between the lines, creating a dome around them all. Now! Naruto shouted. Kakashi trusted Naruto enough to start doing hand seals. Zabuza saw this as his opportunity and, not believing whatever the blonde kid did was of importance, slashed his Kubikirabacho aiming for Kakashi's neck. His blade connected with the red barrier and Zabuza widened his eyes in shock when his attack was completely stopped. Some red sparks appeared at the point of impact and the barrier flashed deep red before reflecting the sword back. The dome surrounding them dissipated into the air afterwards. But that was enough for Kakashi to finish his technique. Dueton. Tatapa. He channeled chakra and blew a strong gust of wind at Zabuza and then sideways, throwing the Kiri missing nin away, while at the same time dispersing the mist enough that it returned some visibility onto the field. Without giving the enemy the chance to summon the mist back, Kakashi engaged Zabuza in combat. With the mist gone and Zabuza's attention on Kakashi, everyone could take a breath of relief when the pressure of the killing intent was gone from them. Naruto once again cut his palm and performed the same technique to raise a protective dome around them. He then turned to Sasuke. I will put some of my blood on you. Sasuke frowned. You will ruin my clothes. Naruto stared incredulously at him. That's something I expected from Sakura, not you. Princess, my blood will disappear if I perform a technique, don't get your panties in a twist. Sasuke extended his hand without further complaints. He saw that Naruto did the same with Kakashi earlier and he couldn't deny the effectiveness of the barrier. So Naruto put some of his blood on Sasuke's arm. It was kind of gross, Sasuke thought, but he could squash those thoughts away easily enough. He was a ninja after all. When they pulled their attention back to the fight between the two jonin, it already has moved onto the lake. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw Zabuza perform a clever maneuver with his water clones that ended up with Suiton. Suro no Jutsu. And Kakashi being trapped in the water prison. Get away from here. Kakashi managed to shout before the jutsu completed and completely encases the jonin in water. Zabuza then proceeded to conjure a couple more water buncheons that stood near the lake, ready to take on the genins. Sasuke, Naruto calmly called. The teen looked at him from the corner of his eyes. I can free Kakashi, but you will need to keep the clones busy. I will do some techniques on you to assist. Seeing the water clones ready to engage them, Naruto firmly said go. Stabbed himself again and started chanting. Sasuke really didn't like taking orders from the blonde, but he also knew Naruto was stronger than him, which he respected in a way. And that's why he had a level of trust in Naruto. If Naruto had a plan and he needed his help, then he would provide that help. Sasuke shot forward towards the group of water clones and engaged them in combat. Despite them being mere clones with a fraction of the power of the original, Zabuza was still an elite jonin in skill comparable to Kakashi, so even the clones were a foe he'd need to take carefully. Sasuke rolled under a blade swing and attempted to retaliate with a kunai strike, but it was blocked by another clone. The third clone moved in with a kick which he blocked and winced at the strength of the kick. He barely managed to lean away from the punch of the fourth clone, and he had to pull another kunai out and parry an incoming blade sweep from the fifth clone by making a cross-section with his two kunais. He knew he didn't have the brute strength to stop the blade, so instead he allowed it to slide across his kunai before vaulting over the blade and rolling away. The whole exchange didn't even last 10 seconds. All the while Kakashi looked horrified that his team remained. Sasuke dared to shoot a look at Naruto just as he finished his techniques. Naruto stood there in a circle of his own blood, with a burning pentagram within it, with his bloody palm making a circular hand seal aiming at Sasuke. Demonic boon of the hair. Demonic boon of the bear. Demonic boon of the boiling blood. Sasuke couldn't understand what Naruto called out, but he did notice that the blood the blonde left on him suddenly spread across his body in thin lines, before flashing in black and crimson and seemingly vanishing within him. All his muscles momentarily twitched before settling, and then he felt it, his blood boiled, but in a good way. He wanted battle, and he wanted it now, and he knew he had the power to overcome his foe. Sasuke disappeared in a flash of speed way greater than before, making the enemy widen his eyes. It was so unexpected that Sasuke managed to take one of the clones by surprise by slashing his throat with his kunai. But Zabuza was not an amateur, and all the water clones rushed into action. First clone once again vertically slashed with his sword, but this time Sasuke easily blocked it with his two kunai before spinning away from an incoming kick from another clone. He attempted to stab the first clone during his spin, but it evaded the attack. Suiton no jutsu. A third clone released a water bullet jutsu, but Sasuke managed to dodge it by jumping into the air. The water bullet hit one of the clones, dispersing it back into water as a result. While in the air, Sasuke performed his own jutsu quicker than he had ever done before, Kaiten Hausenka no jutsu, and spit a volley of small fireballs at the clones. The clones managed to dodge all of them. One of the clones then rushed at Naruto, seeing he was already performing another technique. Sasuke saw that and threw some shuriken, forcing the clone to roll away. The Uchiha then jumped into the fray once again and engaged the clones in battle. Block, punch, roll, parry, counter-strike, evade, kick, lean, spin, handstand, axe kick, kunai throw, roll. Sasuke never felt so exhilarated and alive as he did in this moment. Naruto though just finished another of his ritual. Now there was a pentagram surrounded by a circle and a circle closed off by a triangle in his own blood. Plague of the damned. Immediately the land around burned and churned and turned red and cracked with fiery wisps escaping from the cracks. It quickly spread all around the surrounding area. With a wave of his hand a great sharp stalagmite of crimson rock burst forth and obliterated one clone. Another wave of his hand and another stalagmite destroyed another clone. Naruto did a hand seal and red and black chakra surrounded his right arm before it quickly took on the form of the same ritual circle that was on the ground. Naruto slammed that hand on the cursed ground. The clones had no chance. The ground exploded in multitude of sharp pillars, each aimed to destroy a clone. Some managed to dodge, but those that did were quickly destroyed by Sasuke's follow-up attack. There were no more clones left. Naruto released his technique and all the rocks dispersed into the wind and the land slowly returned back to normal. Naruto saw that more Mizubunshians were forming, so in a burst of speed he dashed past them and no one could stop him, but that didn't matter anymore, he was within range. The slash of his palm, demonic combustion. Naruto's blood on Kakashi glowed red before a small wave of fire exploded from Kakashi himself, destroying the water prison. By this point water clones already formed and Naruto had to evade the strikes and return to his previous position. Thankfully the clones immediately disappeared as Kakashi resumed his fierce battle with Zabuza. Sasuke returned to his side at protecting Tazuna, with all three boons now having ran out. Sasuke, Naruto said, your eyes. Sasuke's eyes widened. He looked at the nearby puddle from the clone, and indeed there it was, Sharingan in both his eyes with a single tomo. I didn't even notice, Sasuke said. What did you do, Naruto? That power I felt. It was you, wasn't it? Later. They couldn't relax just yet. He was happy no one was coming for Sakura and Tazuna, who were just standing there and trying to appear as small as they could in fear of being targeted. The fight between Zabuza and Kakashi seemed to draw to a close as Kakashi managed to perform the water dragon jutsu first. Zabuza got hit by the full force of the attack and thrown against a tree. When he finally stood up, a senbon was thrown into his neck and a hunter nin appeared on the scene. Thank you. I've been hunting him for a while now, the masked hunter nin said. I will take it from here and dispose of the body. With that he picked up Zabuza and disappeared as quickly as he appeared. Only when the danger seemed to have passed did everyone relax. Pretty much everyone looked in wonder at both Sasuke and Naruto, more so at Naruto for his incredible jutsu of changing the landscape. Those ritual techniques were no joke. Kakashi pulled his headband down to cover his Sharingan and then stumbled and fell. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura cried as she quickly ran up. Mama, I will be fine. Just a little bit exhausted, Kakashi said. He then reached into his pouch and got out a pill and quickly swallowed it, nothing a quick soldier pill can't fix until we get to safety. He stood up when he felt the pill work its magic. He looked at Tazuna. Is it far into your house? And no, the bridge builder stumbled, not far at all. Good. Because I think all of us need some rest. He then turned to Naruto. Those are quite some techniques. Your infernal art seemed to be truly multi-purpose and adaptable. Naruto nodded. I developed them in a way that I could fight on my own, but also with others. If I want to protect others, then I thought I'd need to have something supplementary in my arsenal. He then sighed. Can we leave the talking until we have rested, please? I'd kill for a meal. Everyone nodded in agreement and they silently made their ways towards their destination. All the while Sasuke was even deeper absorbed into his own thoughts. What if Naruto was priest of Kami and Shinigami? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.